Joe gets detailed.
Cleveland, Ohio. Played for the Browns for 10 years. Won a couple championships. Retired as the greatest running back in the history of the NFL. There we go.
Done.
Done deal.
He does look a little different than his playing days.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
yeah, things have changed.
Toned down a little bit.
It's an honor to have a legend, though.
So I thought I've been lifting for a long time. And Nsima probably feels like he's been lifting for a long time. But Jim, you've been lifting for a really long ass time.
Yeah.
How many years?
Started when I was 12, and I'm almost 48.
Damn. So. That's a long time. How'd you get started in all this?
I started working out early in martial arts. My mom was a black belt and a hard ass.
Oh, wow.
And so I always had trained in that. And,
Black belt in?
Shorei-ryu, which is the old Okinawan style.
Oh, how cool.
And it was, I guess, it was pretty cool, but interesting household, because of that. But right. I was doing push-ups, duck walks, all these for punishment and part of the, whatever. So I was used to that. I had some kind of outlet, and when I was 13, I met a bodybuilder. Guy came to my house. My stepdad was big into archery. A guy came out, and they were shooting this archery tournament. And it was this dude from California. It was like the epitome blonde, buff California dude. And I remember I was a little kid, and I'm looking at this guy and go, okay, man, who are you? What do you do? How do I look like that? And so, he gave me some tips. Oh, we need to work out. This is what you do. And I literally, next 2 days, went down to Kmart and bought the DP weeder set with my paper out money, strapped it on my bike, and, walked it home, man. And that's when I started lifting weights.
Yeah, that's great. With the martial arts background, did you kind of have this maybe a little bit more body, mind, spirit type thing going on? Even though you started at such a young age, I think some people just go in the gym and they tend to just kind of like grunt it out and get real intense. But I think that martial arts being like a practice, and I think it provides a lot of value, because I think that our lifting should look like that. But is that how you kind of started out, or does it look a little different than that?
No, it was a little bit different, but I spent a lot. I was an only kid, spent a lot of time alone with my dog or whatever. The exercise was kind of an outlet for me.
Oh, I got it.
And so by the time I started lifting weights, I went to school and I was like, hey, man, I'm better than everybody else at this, man. And it was really an outlet for everything that, was negative. And I mean, in essence, it saved my life, because I had kind of a violent home, and that was the way I was expressing myself as a kid before I started doing that. And I was really able to focus in on that. And so it became, I guess, intuitive for me, because I could focus my effort or all my rage and everything into that.
Right. And do you have your own gym?
I don't. No.
You've been training people down in Florida for several years now, and a friend of a friend of a friend who set this up was sharing with me that you extremely educated in training, but also with like kind of unorthodox methods and some unorthodox protocols as well.
Well, do you guys know who Dante Trudell is?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I've known him for a long time. I think we're at 20 plus years.
He has one of the bulk nutrition companies. What's the name of the?
True Nutrition.
True Nutrition.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. So back in the day, all my ideas and most of my training methods and everything I've stolen in part from him.
The dog crap training. Have you ever messed with that before?
I heard about it when I was like on the internet a few years ago.
Yeah, doing like basically 5 sets in a row. They're all till failure. It's brutal.
Yeah. So I took a variation of that and kind of made it my own, made some twist, and that's how I've been training for, I don't know, since I was about 27 that way. And I was pretty big then. 27 is when I was still competing naturally, and I started on anabolics. And that's when I really blew up. I stopped doing the 1.5 to 2 hour long workouts, beat myself up. I couldn't recover from going to positive and negative failure like Yates style. And so Dante was one of the guys. Phil Hernan kind of convinced me to back off, do less, train my body more times in a week, less volume, and that's when I exploded.
It's interesting, getting on anabolics and training less kind of simultaneously.
Well, it didn't work quite that way. I've started anabolics, doing the long
Still
workouts.
Train like a maniac.
Right. Couldn't recover in time. I couldn't get a workout done in 2.5 hours. You know how it is when you're that adapt to that much exercise, your recovery's out of control. Training was very long. So anyway, those guys convinced me to back off, do more times a week, and things really started to happen for me. That's when I
think
got
that's
the
been the
biggest.
biggest shift in strength training the last couple of years. Has been years ago when somebody was into taking performance enhancing drugs, it usually meant that they were like quote unquote like more advanced as a lifter. They've been lifting for a long time, and they decided, hey, you know what? I've been lifting for 10 years. I'm not getting the progress that I want. I'm going to look towards something else. And so these people that would, a lot of times they would choose PEDs, but at the same time they also had some training knowledge. And so the people that were on PEDs versus the people that weren't, the people that were on them usually trained less frequently, overtrained less, not just because they're on stuff, but they literally overtrained less. And the guys that were natural were trying so hard, almost trying too hard, where they were kind of overdoing it. They were overtraining. But now we've seen a big flip because of all the information that's on the internet now. And we've seen a lot of tested athletes, I'll say, do really well and break all-time world records that were set by guys that were clearly using. So a lot of the natural athletes have caught up. And I think part of the reason is just having that information about, look, yeah, you're regardless of whether you're on stuff or not, it's probably not a great idea to spend 3 hours in the gym.
Definitely not, yeah.
Unless it's meaningful.
Well, I've always operated on the theory that almost everybody overtrains. And
Yeah,
if you
I
get them
agree
to
with
kind
that.
of reconsider and back off a little bit, do a little bit more frequent training for the body parts, I usually have a really good result.
And Jim, like, don't you like train in the really high rep ranges, like 20s,
Yeah, so
30s?
Yeah, and that kind of started back then because when you're a beast and you have hammer strength all maxed out and your friends are holding plates on, like, all right, Shell, do 25 reps. Still getting bigger, still getting stronger. So all right, it works. For me now, yeah, it's more of a protection of joints, and I have soft muscle tears, belly tears all over my body. So if I keep adding weight, those re-tear and re-injure. And so yeah, I'm usually in the 25 rep range in my first set to failure, and then subsequently drop down to maybe a 15, maybe an 8, an occasional 8 after that.
Do you see this being used for like all types of, I guess, physique athletes? Because I mean, I don't see many, obviously, strength athletes. They would hate to train up in the 20s and 30s rep ranges.
Yeah.
But how do you see it like benefiting certain types of athletes?
Strength is really out of my wheelhouse because
Okay.
that's a whole different game, right?
Yeah.
Just like, Olympic lifting where you're keeping your weight down, all that stuff, that's really, I don't know. I know when I was doing reps at weight like that and going to failure, I continue to get stronger.
Okay.
And I was either adding reps or adding weights and growing muscle. So, like DC talks about, you can, if you had one machine to do shoulders on a desert island, you just keep adding progressively getting stronger, and you're going to get bigger. And I don't think if you're training to failure with 20 reps, you're still going to get bigger. I don't know how that's going to translate in terms of strength, like you guys do, but definitely for growing muscle, I think that's very effective.
Well, it definitely translates into strength for sure. Whether it transfers over into like that 1 rep max, like that's kind of like what we're looking for a lot of times. So it will transfer over really well into sets of 8 and sets of 5 and stuff, which can help with hypertrophy, which in turn will help, if you have a bigger muscle, is oftentimes going to be a stronger muscle. And so it's definitely beneficial. And so we'll go through different phases of training where we might do some stuff like you're talking about. But a lot of times in powerlifting, in general, it's pretty uncommon to like go to failure. So are you still doing stuff like that where you go to failure? Because you mentioned...
I go to positive failure every time. Yeah. So I'll warm up completely on an exercise. And then depending on, my training cycle or what I'm doing, what my recovery rate is, I'll do, from 2 to 4 sets to positive failure.
So this makes a lot of sense now, because now if you're going to positive failure and you're trying 5 reps, you probably get hurt.
Yeah.
But if
especially
you're doing,
now,
you're doing sets of 15, 20, and it's rep, number 20 through 25, where you're getting some assistance maybe.
I don't. I go.
Oh, you don't get
just a
assistance.
true
It's positive. Yeah, it's positive failure. So what about negatives? You mess with negatives at all?
No, because when I do negatives, I get too sore.
Right.
And recovery doesn't support that to doing multiple sessions a week. Even when I was enhanced, the Dorian Yates training, I'm going to failure, Mike Menzer stuff. I could never recover from those. When I
Those
added
workouts
negatives
are
in,
brutal. Heavy duty
Right.
and blood and guts training.
Yeah. He's like, oh, we're only going to do 4 exercises. Okay. Yeah, but it's going to snatch your soul,
Well, you do 1 set, but a lot of times it was like you'd pre-exhaust first with like leg extensions, and then you'd squat. and then you'd die. Pretty much.
Yeah.
You mentioned, anabolics. Like, around what year did you start getting involved with them? And then how did you even, like, I would imagine, like, years and years ago, it's probably harder to find out information on them.
Yeah. So I did my first bodybuilding contest when I was 18 and, started living the dream, right? I'm going to be a bodybuilder, blah, blah, blah. I got out of the Air Force, came back home, and I was training, natural competing, doing okay. But I always knew that I wanted to look like those guys, like the guys in the magazine. I wasn't going to get there. Continue to train, research. Muscle Media 3000 was real big back then. So I was starting to get some information. I went to the Las Vegas meetup that they had one year, and you got to sit at a round table with Dan Duchesne, with Charles Poliquin, with Bill Phillips, with Sean Phillips. And I had pieced enough together by then to kind of get an idea what I wanted to do. What I was going to look for, how I was going to test. I started doing blood tests from the very beginning. And this is, this is like 90 something, 96, 97.
Right.
Anyway, so I got to talk to Dan Duchesne and, I had a list of questions and, it was hilarious. Cross all that shit out, take that and that, and you'll get big. Okay, when do I stop? And I remember him saying, stop. Like cycle off? I go, yeah. It's when you get sick and you can't do it anymore, then you're done. Okay, man. And so right after that,
what would you stop for?
I know, right? And it served me well. Once I started, I never stopped. I never went off. But I had
higher doses and lower doses.
That's right. Change of compounds. But when I was 27, I had enough information. I felt comfortable. Buddies and I took a trip down to Mexico, got blood work done. I determined that I had some kind of a baseline to go on. And then I started systematically taking compounds by themselves, kind of seeing how it made my body feel, how I reacted to it. About a year later, then I started combining and going full blast. And I was topping out about 235, 240 on stage. I'm natural
big,
and in pretty decent contest shape. But in natural contest, it's by height. So I'm standing next to a guy that's like 5'9" and, getting blown away. Anyway, then I worked my way up to my last contest. I was 275 on stage.
Wow.
Still 30 pounds short of being what I would consider competitive at nationals. And that was my max.
Wow.
Yeah. Dan Duchesne, just so people know, he wrote the book Body Opus. And then I believe he partially wrote the Underground Steroid Handbook, I think, right?
I think that's right.
He was part of that.
Underground newsletter.
Yeah, he's part of that. Yeah, and he had an underground newsletter. And his whole mission was to give out information so people wouldn't get hurt. And so I think people misunderstood. He was giving out a lot of information on steroids and how to use them and how to inject. I mean, he would give you like every detail he could imagine. This is before the internet. This is before there was forums. This is before you could, before Bigger, Stronger, Faster, which is my brother's film. Like it's before this stuff was like more out in the open. It's before, doctors were prescribing it and a lot of these things. And so Dan Duchesne did a huge service to everybody by explaining like, hey, look, this is how it was going. Because a lot of guys were getting sick. People were like sharing needles and all kinds of weird, crazy stuff was going on.
Yeah, it was, there were some crazy stories out there, man, for sure. But he was, when the internet first started, he was one of the guys that, was on boards that you could get to and get information from. And it was amazing. You never knew you found out later who it was. But he was a really cool guy, man. I was fortunate enough to have some interactions with him after the Las Vegas meet, and just always a real interesting, cool dude, man.
He was one of those people that really broke down, how a lot of these supplements were made, and then he really studied a lot of the kind of chemical side of things, I guess, in terms of like PEDs. And in his book, though, he actually talked a lot about like the future, and he was like, "There's going to be stuff around the corner that will come and." Maybe even better than steroids. Have you seen anything yet that compares when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs? Is there what about like SARMs, or what about we have these peptides and things like that, and growth hormone and stuff along those lines?
So my opinion, SARMs are a complete waste. If you're going to do SARMs, you might as well do anabolics. At least we know what's going to happen. I know that may be a unpopular opinion, but I haven't had any real use for them. Had a lot of people try them out.
You've tried them yourself?
I've tried them.
Yeah.
And, with clients like guys who don't want to jump on but want to do something, just get a much cleaner, more predictable better result just using anabolics. As far as peptides, I've experimented with a lot of those, started with TB4 at real high doses. The only thing that I'll use consistently is like melanotannin, because I'm super white and I live in Florida.
Right, keep you dark.
Yep, so that helps. But as far as the growth hormone releasing peptides and stuff, if I'm injecting myself 5-7 times a day, I could equate that to roughly about a 2 IU dose of growth hormone. I'll just do growth hormone.
So you have to administer it a lot, and that's kind of the flaw.
My experience was, I'm doing it a lot, and I don't mind taking shots, but when you're out like 5-6 a day.
What about TB400? Isn't that something that can help with injuries?
Yep. So when I first started using that, I had started my medical device career where I was standing in the OR, sometimes 18 hours, watching surgery or standing there on a hard surface. And so I still weighed, 285, 290, and my body started to fucking hurt, man. Had body aches all over. I'm certainly not going to hit NSAIDs for that. So I looked into TB4, started doing that at real high dose, and had good experience with it. Overall inflammation and pain seemed to be reduced. And then I got onto curcumin after that. So I tried injectable curcumin at high dose and found that just oral at a certain dose matched what I was injecting, and so kind of switched off with curcumin for that.
What is curcumin, by the way? I'm just listening.
It's turmeric. It's a spice basically, and curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. And Dante just did a real good job on Instagram of breaking down why he recommends curcumin, why he had us pushing for it back in the day. Does a lot of beneficial things for you, but one thing it does is it really knocks down inflammation. And for me, that's probably the main benefit why I've stayed on it. TB4 is real interesting though, because if you have an acute injury, like the last time I had my pec, I have scar tissue in my pec minor that every now and then pulls away, get a little bruising. I used to treat that with TB4, seemed to be effective, but BP 157 seems to be a little bit more effective for acute on site, and so I have better luck with that. But
and these things are not not illegal, right?
Yeah, kind of gray.
The gray area. I mean, you can order them on. I guess because you can order them online doesn't mean they're not illegal, but
right.
They're like I guess you can order them, and they're not a scheduled drug. It was my understanding.
Right.
It just says not for human use on them, basically.
Yeah,
right?
some of the companies got in trouble. There's been busts on that, and I'm not sure because if the wording was correct for human usage or how they sold it, but yeah, it's one of those kind of gray market areas. But a lot of the anti-aging physicians and more forward-thinking physicians, especially in the TRT space, are prescribing or writing scripts for some of the peptides now, and there's compounding pharmacies that will fulfill those, and so you get more of a maybe human grade, or it's not put together in a guy's bathtub or something.
You started training when you were, or didn't start training, but you said you started using when you were 27,
Yep.
right? So you already had 14 years of training in. And I know that a lot of young guys come to you, maybe they're like 18, 19, and they're trying to figure out, should I start, should I not? What's your advice to guys like that? Like, do you have like a general, you should be training for this long, and then if you feel that you want to do this, then maybe it's a good idea?
Yeah, I think that one, the older you are, the better chance that you're going to have to survive it. The guys that I've seen start really, really young, whether they had a genetic predisposition for cardiovascular disease or whatever, the guys who started really young and hit it hard and stayed on it, just in my experience, man, had a bad result later on in life. And I don't know,
like health-wise?
Yeah, health-wise. And again, one of the things that I try to talk to somebody about, if they're going to do that, is you really have to determine your risk. And that's genetic predisposition. Do you have cardiac, disease history in your family? Taking blood work, seeing what your risk is, kind of weighing that out before you do it. So all that said, I think that the longer that you train and the more familiar you are with your body, the more able you are to go in and do a workout, and you've taken your body to extremes, you've dieted, you know how to put on muscle, you know how to lift, you know how to recovery. Then you add anabolics, and you get a really good result out of that as compared to not. One of my favorite things when I lived in Vegas, people would say, "Oh, do you think that guy's on? Do you think that guy's on?" I'm like, "All right, man, I'm at Gold's Gym at 5:00 in the afternoon at Gold's Gym in Vegas. 90% of the dudes are on something right now. I guarantee it. How many of them look really great? Well, like 5. That's a difference, man. I mean, those guys, that guy's injecting whatever, he's bench pressing, he's going home and drinking a beer. It's not going to work, man. I mean, you get stronger, but that's the difference. So I think you really want to consider, if you're going to do it, what your risk factors are and what your end goal is going to be, because you're not just going to do a cycle and go, oh, that's it, man. I'm buff now, bro. Everything's cool. It doesn't work like that, So I always try to explain what's your end game. When are you going to stop? What are you doing it for? Is it to win one contest? Okay, let me know when you stop then, talk to you.
It seemed like a lot of trial and error has happened over the years for you. What are some things that you've done that were just not a good idea?
Drug-wise or
just workout-wise, drug-wise? Yeah, whatever.
Well, I love training. I used to really love training hard. I had a mindset that I could pull energy from and go and destroy myself. Right. Love to do that, but realized that was really unbeneficial. And so, that's probably the biggest lesson that I really had to back off of. Drug wise, we chatted a little bit earlier about DNP. That probably wasn't the smartest decision.
Yeah. What is DNP?
So DNP is a dinitrophenol, and it's a substrate when they make TNT.
Everyone's writing this down right now. They're like DNP. Okay.
So it's basically bug poison, and bodybuilders take it, unwise bodybuilders take it, and it raises your body heat, and you can lose fat faster because of it. Back in the day, Dan Duchesne had kind of speculated that was going to be this thing that you could get, to 4% body fat shredded with.
I think he said a pound a day. You can lose a pound of body fat a day.
Jesus.
I tried, man. I tried. There was a few times, I lived in Flagstaff, Arizona at the time, and it's, 7,000 feet.
It's already
it's
a
cold.
million degrees.
And no, it's cold.
It's
7,000 feet. I remember walking to my car to start the car in a tank top, and there's steam coming off of me as it's snowing. And
because it raises your body temperature up so much.
Yeah. So I'd be walking around with
insane.
a 102, 103 temperature all day long. Probably wasn't too smart. And it leads me back to, why was I searching for something like that? And it was because I was searching for something to make it easier instead of just concentrate on what I know, put in the hard work, suffer, do it that way. So
there's something exciting about some experimentation.
Oh yeah. You're right. But if I were to look back and say the biggest mistake was always trying to look for something rather than, hey man, I know this works, I'm going to put in the work.
It is definitely, I feel that way a lot of times with myself. I feel like I always for some reason tell myself I need something. I need, like, it could be anything. It could be really minor. Just leaving my house. I won't leave my house without bringing something with me. And I think that I need it. And I don't know if that's ingrained from all the years of lifting, I won't leave the house without food, or now I fast more often. So that's not as common, but even if I go on a trip, I'm like, all right, I got to bring beef jerky with me, and I need to bring these, cold brew coffees. Or, I mean, look how much shit I have sitting right, I always just think I need stuff. So maybe that's just something that you picked up along the way,
Could be, man. The joke is I haven't left the house without food in 20 some years. And, everybody at work, hey, how much chicken you got in the cooler?
Right.
Hey man, that's just what it takes.
Right. Are you've been messing around with some fasting yourself, right?
Right. So
but before you go into fasting, what did you think about fasting when you first started to hear about it? Because we were like, this seems like the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah, it's for yoga chicks, and so why would I fast?
We're like, don't eat. That sounds awful.
That's ridiculous.
I'll be so hungry.
So my old partner Jay Campbell and I, we wrote testosterone therapy book. Put out a bunch of content, and one of the things that always came back was diet advice. And so we wanted to put together something to give people and have a resource. At the time, we were experimenting with intermittent fasting. He responded way more positively to it than I did. I found that even if I tried to upregulate and adjust calories on my training days, my metabolism would start to slow down. And I'm not a super smart guy. I don't know everything, but I do know my own body. And for me, being on a consistent eating schedule is best for me to lose weight or gain weight. The fasting, if I do it more than 2-3 times a week, my recovery sucks and my metabolism slows down. So that's my whole take on it. But for most people, a lot of people that just are trying to do something, get something done, Intermittent fasting is great for them and teaches them a lot of very valuable things. One is, a lot of people haven't fasted more than 8 hours, right? And so you get somebody to hit like a 16-hour mark, and they go through those two massive hunger pains that you go through, like first thing in the morning and then sometime around lunch, and they successfully beat those and get through them. It empowers them. It really gives them something that they've never experienced before to say, oh man, I don't really have to eat. It's my body kind of playing tricks on my mind, trying to get me to eat.
Yeah.
And so from anything, the book we put together, that's one of the very valuable lessons that I think everybody gets out of fasting.
I like what you said there, that it empowers you, because a lot of the people that I help, it really kind of depends on the person. I don't always suggest fasting, and I'll just say this again because I always mention this. If you're starting a diet, don't start out with fasting. If you're not a veteran of dieting, don't mess around with it. Give yourself some time to adjust to the proper foods and meal prep, and just get used to the whole process before you go diving into fasting. But when I do recommend fasting, I've seen people that typically had a really hard time with like willpower have gotten a lot stronger, a lot faster in terms of their will with food. And you mentioned, Nsima, like you were really attached to food. Yeah, right? You were like working and you're like, I need to eat, and you were getting hungry, right?
Yeah. Like I'd be working. I was just talking to you about this, Jim. I'd be working during the day and I'd always be thinking about my next meal. And I mean, I used to I still can eat a lot of food, but I don't need it as much. It's a lot of it allows me to control myself much better. And I didn't really think I'd ever really be able to feel like this because, I come from a bodybuilding type background or an athletic type background where I eat a lot of food. Not to have to eat so much to be able to perform in what I do feels really, really good. So it's a really, like you said, it's super empowering. But my question to you is for you, in terms of athletes, because you work with a lot of people that, are in the gym trying to get bigger. You mentioned that. And you also mentioned you don't even fast. You don't fast every day. How do you handle that?
I don't recommend fasting for people trying to really radically change their body with muscle weight or muscle, doing what we do. I can't upregulate enough to get ready for training sessions. And so one of the things that I do when I run an experiment, I run it to the extremes, right? I take it to both extremes to see where the middle is and where it's effective. In the diet book that we put together, you fast on non-training days and then you overeat slightly on training days. For me, that didn't work with the type of training I do. Threw exogenous insulin in the mix, still couldn't recover and successfully navigate that. For most people though, starting out, most people that are just starting to lift, just starting to get into fasting and, came from like a standard American diet, that works great. But they're not, they have a long way to go before they get to a performance place where they need to start really optimizing everything to keep gaining. If you take somebody who's never lifted weights and you feed them cat food and have them do leg extensions, oh my God, cat food grows muscle. Right. Yeah, man. But look at the experiment, but for somebody who's a little bit more advanced, I don't see that fasting on a regular basis is beneficial. But that said, the benefits of fasting, I'll do every 3 weeks, I do a very long fast. And then about every week and a half, I'll throw in like a half calorie day.
What's a long fast for you, by the way?
So long fast is hitting 24 hours. It depends. Okay. So if I'll do my, what I call my Dr. Manhattan protocol, where I hit the ketones at about 20 hours in, I'll go to 24 or 30 hours. But that's more for health benefits and to get into this crazy flow state that I get in, but mostly the health benefits, reset insulin sensitivity, all those things that I do. And I have metformin on board. So I get into a little bit more efficient state of ketosis when I fast.
What does the metformin do?
So good question. So metformin, I've always been, well, not always, for the last 5 years, I've been involved in metformin, been a proponent of it. Just to give you the background of it, back in the day when I started using exogenous insulin, I was talking to some of the guys. They're like, man, you're gonna ruin your insulin sensitivity. You need to reset it with metformin. This was probably.
I love it. You just need you need to grab a hold of another drug to reset this other drug that you're using. That's the best.
How it is. You got 10.
Don't get off of it and let your body reset naturally. Switch over to something different.
So metformin was very difficult to find for me back then. I couldn't find it. Finally ran into a guy's grandmother that had a tub of it. Tried it, but I'm on 18 different things. Didn't notice anything. Fast forward to where growth hormone was available. Got on growth hormone. growth hormone definitely makes you less sensitive to insulin. So metformin really made sense then to me. I was able to get it, went on it, didn't really notice anything. Fast forward to about 5 years ago, my partner Jay and I hooked up with this guy named Dr. Osborne. He's anti-aging guy. He's on metformin. This guys, you need to take a little look at this. So dove back into the information, went through everything that I could read on metformin. It's a heavily studied drug, and just looked at the mechanism of action. So the main benefit, and like Ben Greenfield and my ex-partner Jay, they just did this amazing podcast where they kind of dispelled some of the myths of metformin, but they missed the big point of why you would want to take metformin. So the mechanism of action is it inhibits your liver from producing glucose. And so your liver contains glycogen, and when your bloodstream needs glucose, it's stimulated with glucagon, but then it releases glucose in your bloodstream. Normally, your liver plays a game back and forth, or your pancreas plays a game back and forth, and it balances your blood glucose. So you get an insulin release, you get a glucose release, insulin release, glucose release, and that all throughout the night goes on. When you're on metformin, that's inhibited, and so you're exposed to less insulin over time. And I think insulin exposure on your vascular system is what causes vascular inflammation and damage and disease. And so if you're on metformin, you're exposed to less insulin, you become more insulin sensitive. And so when I started taking it about 5 years ago, I noticed that my relationship with insulin improved radically. It felt like I had a reset of about 10 years on my metabolism. And so it was easier to diet. I noticed fat coming off better. I could eat carbohydrates. I could re-glycogenate more efficiently. Everything that I wanted to happen happened. When you fast, when you enter a fasting state, eventually you run out of glycogen from your liver, and then it depends on metabolic demands at the time, but you get into a mild state of ketosis. That's one of the benefits of fasting, because you have the absence of insulin, you become more insulin sensitive.
That's actually what most people think. Most people think the benefits of fasting come almost strictly from that.
Yeah, and I would argue it's probably the main factor.
Yeah.
Besides autophagy and all the things that happen cellular, but so it increases your insulin sensitivity. When you're on metformin, you fast. I think you hit that state more effectively. When you're on metformin, you do fasted cardio. I think you're lipolyzing fat more efficiently, faster. When you're on,
like insulin and carbohydrates just they're not in the way, so to speak.
And then had a friend introduce me to Don Layman. Don Layman's a high-end protein researcher. He did studies because one of the things my wife went on the carnivore diet because she's allergic to all these different foods. My concern was, well, how are you going to re-glycogenate efficiently for your workouts? Because she does Orange Theory and she's a freak anyway. Like we were talking about, she's, alien DNA and buff by looking at her weight. But so I'm like, I don't know if you're going to be able to glycogenate efficiently. Anyway, he did rat studies where they fed rats protein and carbs at night or just protein, equivalent amounts. The rats that were fed just protein re-glycogenated their muscles more efficiently than the protein and carbs, because the protein and carb model, you're getting this release of glycogen from your liver in response from the insulin. And when your liver needs glycogen refilled, that takes priority over your muscles. And so I kind of noticed that if I eat carbohydrates on metformin, if I eat carbohydrates and a little bit of protein a night, I glycogenate very efficiently like I never have before. If I eat protein only, I still glycogenate, but not anywhere near having a mix of protein carbs. So I think metformin makes that process even more efficient as well. If that makes sense.
What about if you use metformin and don't eat carbs? Would that be a recipe for disaster? Or that?
No. So it's not a glucose disposal agent.
Got it.
So it's a long story, but it can make you go hypoglycemic, but not really.
Oh, okay.
It's difficult to get in that situation. So your blood glucose will remain constant. Your liver just is inhibited from releasing as much glucose and being exposed to that much more insulin. And so if you think about like insulin exposure, just to touch on vascular health. So if you had
cardiovascular.
Yeah.
health,
So if you had, vascular disease, what are the things that you would want to do? Well, a ketogenic diet. Yeah, but aren't fats bad for you? Well, it doesn't matter because you don't have insulin. Low carb diet, you have less insulin exposure. Metformin, well, okay, that lowers insulin exposure, reverses, if you change lifestyle, reverses vascular disease. So all the things that we think about and we do, I think need to be considered with vascular health. So even as a bodybuilder, if we're fasting, doing all these things, I would recommend that everybody does something to increase their insulin sensitivity and make that relationship with insulin healthy, and you're not overexposing your vascular system to it.
So lifting weights can help with that, right?
Absolutely.
And then your
exercise,
dietary choices, I think, can help to some extent. What are some other things people can do? Like, what about like just walking or something like that? Cardiovascular training or anything like that? Does that help at all?
Yeah. Any exercise will improve your insulin sensitivity. Losing fat improves your insulin sensitivity and your hormonal system. You produce less estrogen.
So even in the case of like a power lifter or maybe an athlete that's in like a weight class division type thing, it might be wise for them to, even if they compete kind of heavy, it might be wise for them to take a little bit of weight off, get a little healthier in their off season, and then kind of go back to doing what they were doing just for health purposes.
Yeah. And if you think about it too, and on the bodybuilding side, right? I mean, when I was carrying around 300 pounds, I wasn't healthy, man. My blood work was pretty decent. I never had high blood sugar, but don't fool yourself, right? If I was doing that still, if I was a heavy power lifter, I would be doing things to reset my insulin sensitivity. One would be maybe dropping weight in the off season. Another would be doing a long fast every 3 weeks. Maybe a half day where you're doing like half caloric intake, because if you do like a mimic fast like that, so if you're, I take in about 2,400 calories a day. If I drop it down with bone broth and do like a 600-700 calorie day, that mimics a lot of the effects of fasting. Little things like that, cardiovascular, eating less sugar, being exposed to less insulin, all those things can contribute to better vascular health.
Aside from like the drug protocol and stuff, it sounds like most of the stuff you're recommending sounds pretty easy to implement. There's somebody listening right now that's going 24-hour fast. Like, I don't, but it's not hard once you get a little bit used to fasting. Do you think that that's one of the other benefits of fasting, is just that it's so black and white, it's so simple? Like, you just don't eat.
I mean, I think that's what draws people to the carnivore diet too, right? I mean, you just eat meat.
That's it.
I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
I'm hungry, I keep eating
What's
meat.
the diet? It's meat.
Yeah. Bacon, no, T-bone, yeah, whatever you want.
Right.
There's simplicity to it, and also the mental state that you get, like you touched on, right? So when you hit a certain amount of time, for me, it's somewhere around 12, 16 hours. I produce more ketones, and I'm an idiot. I always test myself. I got the keto mojo, so I'm testing my glucose and my ketones. When I start
pricking your finger all day long, making it bleed, right?
I love needles. Yeah. So when I hit like trace ketosis, my cognitive ability goes up, enhancement's there. I'm more clear headed. And I mean, that's one of the huge benefits, and anybody can do it. And if you get to that state and you feel that, I think it makes it even easier to do and more self-powering for you to go back there.
It sounds like some of this practice too may have some, it's hard because cancer is such a tricky thing. We don't really know why people get it all the time, but it seems like it might even be anti-cancer, right? I mean,
right. So there's a bunch of research on that, the way that your body cleans its cells out when you fast. Yeah. So could be anti-cancerous. If you look at the metformin data,
and even just keeping the insulin down may have some benefit towards that. I mean, that's what some of the research is leaning towards right now.
Right. So a lot of the data on metformin is anti-cancer, and I think that's because of the insulin exposure, in part. But I think that's probably the main
Have you heard of the Keto Pet Sanctuary that was funded by some of our people over at Quest Nutrition? It's pretty cool. But they basically had these dogs on a ketogenic diet. I'm not sure if they used metformin or not, but I know they used a ketogenic diet. And with the dogs, it was not hard for them to put them on a diet because they served them the food. Whereas with people, it can be a little bit trickier. But a huge percentage of the dogs went into remission. They did lose a couple of them. And that was kind of their focus. They were like, hey, we still lost a few, but they did have a large percentage that went into remission. Doesn't mean a ketogenic diet cures cancer, but it does show you that maybe there is something there.
Well, Dom
D'Agostino, there you go.
Thank you.
So he's down there in Florida too.
Yeah, so he's done a bunch of amazing research, and there are types of cancers that respond very efficiently to ketogenesis in ketone bodies.
That's wild.
Some thrive on it, but the ones that he's identified, if you had that would be a very good idea to follow for sure.
Now, what's the deal with these keto esters?
So there's a different keto products.
I guess maybe can you first explain what a ketone is for some people that maybe aren't
so
on
ketone's
par with what the hell that is.
Ketone's a fractionated fat that your body uses for fuel. So if you think about like a storage version of fat, that's the broken down piece that your body can utilize for energy. basically, right? High level view. Don't tear me apart. Scientist
Yeah,
guys,
There's somebody like, that's not
I know.
true.
Yeah,
That's not
yeah.
what Lane Norton said.
I'll just hear it. Lane. And anyway, so that's the energy substrate that you use. Back in the day, John Perillo was having us drink high caprylic.
John Perillo.
Yep, you're
The
drinking
MCT oil.
MCT oils with the caprylic acid.
Son of a bitch.
That actually produces more ketones than the ketone
Is he
salts.
still alive?
He is, man.
I gotta
Yes,
find
yeah.
him.
Yeah, he's on Facebook. So anyway, yeah, we were doing it back then. You notice a uptake in energy and stuff. Then the keto war started when the MLM companies came out and everybody was trying to prove it. And, I fought in the keto wars for very long and hard. And anyway, the ketone salts basically.
Keto wars. I like that.
It's the internet keto wars. So basically, ketone salt is a ketone molecule stabilized with some type of mineral salt.
It's got to be attached to
potassium.
something, right?
Right. And then there's keto esters. So ketone ester is different than a ketone salt, or you can use like an MCT oil with caprylic acid to get them. So the people who were selling MLM products to ketone salts were making all these outrageous claims, all this stuff. Turns out the study data indicated if you just took MCT oil with a high caprylic acid, you produce more exogenous ketones than if you took the ketone salts. If you take enough ketone salts, you shit yourself. And so there's a very staunch limit of how much of those you can take.
And the amount that you need ends up driving up your sodium maybe kind of through the roof and things like that as well,
Yeah,
right?
you can run into issues like that. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. And you don't really get into a super deep state of ketosis. And when I say that, I'm talking like 4 to 6 millimoles ketones, where you're like, if you were in nutritional ketosis for months and you were fully keto adapted deep in, and you feel all these benefits. So when I fast and I'm on metformin and I go long enough and I hit ketone esters, then I go into a very deep state of ketosis. We're talking 5+ millimoles. And that's when, I turn into the blue guy, the Dr. Manhattan, and feel great and everything's amazing. I can't get there with ketone salts. I'll shit myself
Feel like you're
before I
just
get there.
meditating in Tibet somewhere.
Yeah, like I'm on Mars. Making
Ketones
those,
are making your head float around.
It's super cool. It's really, they're expensive. It's
Yeah.
$33 a hit, but do it once a month. It's amazing. The MCT oils I can't get close with. Ketone salts are ineffective for me. So that's
How would you recommend somebody maybe go about trying some of this protocol that you're suggesting? So maybe get on a ketogenic diet for how many days would you need to kind of?
Well, I'm not an expert in ketogenic diets, but you have to be in a state of nutritional ketosis for my understanding months. And, if I did a 2-month run or so, I'm still not in a real deep state of ketosis, but also I hate eating fat, nothing but fat, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's kind of gross. Yeah.
2 eggs and a half a tub of cream cheese. That's that's not my ideal breakfast. So I never lasted very long. I'd get 2.5 months, maybe 3, and I was never
real
fully.
keto diet's like 80% fat or something.
Right.
Crazy.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's not what you think.
Disgusting.
Yeah. That's like an avocado. That's your lunch. But to get in that deep state, you're fully keto adapted. Then you're hitting these deep keto numbers where you're like 3 to 5 all day long. And then I would say that's when people rave about, having all these benefits and all this magic happens, but it's difficult to get there. You got to put your time in. It's difficult, I think, to eat that way and get there. There's a lot of products out nowadays that help you do that, but it's a low compliance diet, at least from my end.
Do you think the ketone esters are still beneficial when maybe you're eating carbohydrates and you have a kind of a more almost like bodybuilding style diet, which it sounds like you kind of have?
So I've tried it. So John Meadows came out with a product that had some ketone esters in it, and I was right up his ass, busting his balls about it. And he just said, "Hey, try it out. So go low carb, go flat. You're depleted. You're out of glycogen, and take this. Has a little bit of carbohydrates and some ketone salts in it, and you kind of experience a benefit from that. You do. I haven't tried that with ketone salts because then my training sucks. I'm flat.
Right.
Part of the way I train, I never train on empty glycogen. Unless I absolutely have to for cutting or something, but always train with glycogen. But I don't know if that would be beneficial to add ketones in. I know people do it. I know they work out that way and they train, but I haven't talked to somebody that said, "Hey man, here's my DEXA results. I put on 10 pounds of muscle. I've been training for 8 years and I did that in ketosis." I've seen anecdotal like, "Hey man, I just started training and I put on muscle." Well, okay. That doesn't tell me anything. Or, you know, I took this 140-pound guy and put him on ketone salts, and he got stronger. Yeah, he just started training. So to answer your question, I haven't. I know guys use it for a purpose, but I don't see it in a benefit for what I do. I use it to turn into blue guy for, you know, half a day and have amazing productivity. But
right.
That Dr. Manhattan protocol that you were talking about, because my head's going to here. You know, you mentioned that you go on like a 24 to 30 hour fast.
Yep.
So someone like me, I don't find it too difficult to do a fast like that. And you mentioned that you only do it like what, once a month or something like that?
Once every 3 weeks.
Or once every 3 weeks. Could it be possible to do it once a week or twice a week?
Yeah.
I mean, and achieve that state, you know, twice a week?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I get there a little bit more efficiently with metformin on board, but you don't have to, right? You can use berberine if you wanted to, or, you know, whatever. I think that makes a fast more efficient. When I get into that state, then I hit you know, you have to take carbohydrates with the ketone esters. Long story behind that, but you don't really feel them. Yeah, every time that I've done that, I get into that state no matter what. I think you could do that once a week without a problem if you wanted to. I don't know what the effect would be on your training, but I think you would have that same effect.
Okay. And yeah. I mean, you mentioned like obviously the mental benefits, and what are like the overall benefits of doing that specifically for you?
Well, I mean, you can talk about being adapted to different fuel sources. So, you know, if you the more times that you're exposed to ketones and the pathways that those turn on and activate, the more efficient you are at getting into that state and using those as fuel. So we talk about that, the anti-inflammation for brain, neural tissue, all that. There's a lot of benefits to being in a deep state of ketosis like that. I don't know how long you have to be exposed to it, but I feel fantastic the day afterwards.
Okay.
But I do it for the mental state, and, you know, I feel amazing, and I set it up right. So, you know, I clear out my desk, I clear out my office, I outline the projects that I'm going to work on. I have specific things that I know I'm going to do, and I give myself time limits. It's like if I'm doing a microdose of LSD or something, you know, I set up the project, I have everything outlined that I want to do so that I'm kind of enhancing the state that I'm going after.
That makes a lot of sense. You're getting prepared for what you're about to undergo, what you're about to do.
Yeah, and it's $33 a hit, so I don't want to waste that. You know,
that is expensive. Yeah.
The esters or the esters.
So
okay.
there might be other companies, but I get them from HVMN, and I'm not a fan of the nootropics because mine rapes theirs. But the ketone esters, they make. I feel that it's a very quality product. Every time I've used it, it's worked, and I think they're the only ones that really commercially.
You have some of your own supplements?
Yeah. So I have a nootropic that I make.
Oh, cool.
Brought for you guys.
What's in it?
Just the normal stuff, you know, a little of that.
A little bit of LSD. Like, holy shit, man. He gave us some good stuff.
Some DNP, you know.
Yeah, I took 3 of them, so we'll see what happens midway through the podcast.
I thought you were taking 5, man.
I chickened out.
Yeah.
He's just going to start floating over there.
Yeah, I don't want to turn into the blue guy. I got stuff to do today.
Very cool. How'd you get into that stuff?
Always been experimenting around. I ran a supplement store for 7 years. I tried a supplement back then. It didn't work. It was actually for brain health, but I figured out that marketing was important too. Anyway, so I've always been in the nutritional space.
Marketing's the only thing that matters, actually.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately.
So ran into some partners. They wanted to take a run at a nootropic again. Long story short, 3 years of mixing shit in my bathroom and, you know, in the kitchen, handing it out to everybody I knew. I came up with something that I really liked, but it had 22 ingredients. It was awful to make, and talking to Dante and those guys, the company can't make it. It's too expensive. So I kind of gave up, went back at it, did some research, found some new stuff, came back with five supplements, combined them. Fortunate enough to have a beta group of about 20, 25, 30 guys that I can always send stuff to and they'll give me feedback on. Sent them a million different capsule combinations, tried it for myself.
Everybody since has gotten their PhD.
Right. It's the limitless. Came up with 5 ingredients that I really liked. And my goal was to make something that I felt was equivalent to 100 milligrams of modafinil. And so very proud of the product that we made.
What's modafinil?
So modafinil is Provigil. It's a wakefulness drug. I got turned on to it. I used to work in trauma and surgery, and I'd be there all day. I'd come back at like 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm asleep. These guys are all awake, you know, partying, doing, working. I'm like, all right, man. What's
up with these guys?
Yeah. All right, what the hell's going on, man? The doc's like, oh, man, let me give you a script. Like, all right, do I want to take this? Did some research. Oh, it's a wakefulness drug. So anyway, it's prescribed for sleep worker syndrome and narcolepsy. You can get it online. You can get it offshore, but it's one of the more nootropic drugs that everybody uses and plays with. So
cool. Do you sell some other supplements as well?
Nope. Right now we just have the EMF.
And how long you've had this out for?
So it's been out 3 years.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
That's great. That's exciting.
And is it mainly like for like wakefulness, or is it all focus and like?
So if you do the research on the ingredients, it does everything. But when you look like at an herb like rhodiola or bacopa, which I have in it, it says it does all this stuff, and there's studies that prove this. But overall, they're adaptogenic herbs. They have shown cognitive benefits. They help you deal with stress. Do I think they enhance learning? I think you setting it up to be in a state to learn is a little bit different, and you having discipline.
Yeah, because you eat a giant ass Big Mac with it. It's probably not gonna, right? Need like a little protocol with it, probably, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if I would claim that it really makes you learn better, but it does help you focus, especially if you want to be focused on a task. It does give you energy. I made it so that if you have to have a kick-ass day, you can have a kick-ass day, and that's how I use it. If I have a big day,
there's some people that talk about like neural drive. Like, does it help tap into the central nervous system or anything like that? I don't know how familiar you are with that.
We have a stimulant called teacrine in it, and it's similar to caffeine, but it's not. It's from a African tea. It doesn't attenuate like caffeine does, and so it stays. The dose that's effective for you now stays effective for you. Nice. That does increase everything. So right. it's a stimulant.
Very cool.
But I'm very proud of it. It's turned out really well.
And have you seen a little bit, maybe more of an effect if someone's in a fasted state, or not really?
So we put that in the book too, right? So that was part of our protocol, that you could use something like this to train, or if you're going to do cardio fasted. And it didn't seem to kick us out, even though you're ingesting calories. It didn't seem to kick us out of that fasted zone. Huh. I didn't notice a glucose or a ketone different rise. Technically you're not fasting, but yeah, you could certainly use that as a stimulant to get through workouts. Okay. And it does curb your appetite a little bit.
Does it work a little bit better on an empty stomach, or does it matter too much?
I like it on an empty stomach. I take it with caffeine first thing in the morning. I might hit a little bit, another caffeine hit in the early afternoon, and maybe another 1 or 2 capsules.
How far down this rabbit hole have you traveled? Do you, are you adding weird stuff to your coffee and stuff like that too? Because there's things that you can add to your coffee. There's like amino acids, and there's all kinds of stuff you can add to your coffee to get like more benefits from it. Have you messed around with some of that stuff?
Dude, I constantly experiment. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how much time you have, but
your kitchen probably looks like mine. So, it's like, yes. Powders and stuff everywhere.
I've tried a lot of different things. When coming up with this formula, I wanted to make something that you're not going to make something that works for everybody's brain chemistry, but something that would work for a lot of people's. Now, I have about 10 things that I would like to add on to this. I have things that I take to enhance this. That might be something we add on in the future. But yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can add. Alpha GPC we were talking about is one that I really like. I eat a lot of chlorine in my diet, so I don't really see a massive benefit from taking alpha GPC like some people do. But to me, that's one thing that you can add in, even if you take coffee with it. Takes you on a little bit better ride and leaves you better for it afterwards. And so there's all kinds of stuff.
What was we were talking about the other day, like theanine or something like that?
Yeah, theanine. Yeah,
theanine, there you go.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier too. And what I was going to ask you, so like with Alpha Brain, if I take it on a consistent basis, I seem to need more. With your nootropic, can you take it consistently for like a long duration, or do you have to kind of like wean off it and then take a break and then come back to it?
I recommend taking breaks, because that's what I do with everything. But the data on the theanine or on the teacrine suggests that you don't have to take a break because it doesn't attenuate. And so people that take that every day, I think they upregulate with caffeine by adding caffeine. So it's hard for me to say that, if you took it every day for a year, it would still be effective. I would suggest that you cycle off. And that's one of the reasons why we put 20 servings in a bottle, because I want you to take weekends off, or at least 2 days a week.
Come on, man. What did Dan Duchesne teach you? You're not supposed to come off. You got to stay up.
Shame.
Could you explain a little bit more about the teacrine? Because I know there's a lot of people that do take a ton of caffeine. We were talking about pre-workouts yesterday and how you just seem to need to take more and more.
Yeah, so to get too far in the weeds, but you guys familiar how caffeine works?
Not really,
It's a wakefulness.
Go for it.
You take it and you feel great. So basically, it's a wakefulness agent on your brain. and it stimulates your adrenaline production and kind of upregulates that way. But in your brain, there's adenosine receptors, and caffeine blocks those. And once those get full, that's kind of your body's way to say, hey, I'm tired, I should rest. Caffeine inhibits those. Your body will respond by making more of those adenosine receptors. So you have to take more caffeine to feel like you once did. For me, I detox on caffeine all the time. So when I get to the point where I'm hitting a gram and a half a day of caffeine, I cold turkey it, I back off, I'm out for a week, reset my receptors a little bit. Sometimes it takes longer. 2 weeks is a better protocol.
It's hard to fast away from caffeine, man. It's tough.
Awful, man. It's awful. If you take something like teacrine, that helps. It doesn't affect that pathway. It doesn't affect the adenosine receptors. And so you can have a stimulant effect to get through it, or modafinil, or, any other kind of stimulant. But that's why caffeine really upregulates so fast and you don't feel the way you did when you first take it. I recommend that you cycle your dosage of caffeine, if you can, to keep it somewhat effective, because, we've all been there where you're drinking those things. And
have you used other pharmaceuticals to enhance your training?
Such as?
Well, you're mentioning like something like modafinil. Like, have you taken anything that like heightens your senses or gets you fired up or anything like that for training?
Like,
it seems like you kind of have explored just about everything.
So there's phentermine, and the amphetamine based kind of scripts that you can get. So there's Adderall, trained on that, trained on phentermine. Phentermine's amazing at curbing your appetite. But all those drugs, like Dan Duchesne said with clenbuterol, hey man, it's a great drug. Don't take it very long and don't take it very often. And so if you take some of those, or even modafinil, I don't stay on for more than a few days. I do tend to have a better training session. I'm more focused. I'm more in the zone, but it has a detrimental side effect. I'm awake, screws up my sleep. I'm keyed up longer and I can't relax.
It might bring you down recovery too, right?
Yeah, it kind of does, man. You crash
like what
really.
What goes up comes down a little bit, right?
There's no free ride, man. There's no free ride. So if you do any type of stimulant, you take a pre-workout, there's a back end to that, man, where you got to pay for it.
Yeah, I had to cut back on caffeine a while back just because I wasn't sleeping, and I would have caffeine still really early in the morning, but I was having too much.
Yeah.
And it would still affect me, 10, 12, 14 hours later, it'd still be, I guess, in my system because I would be restless, going to bed. And someone's like, man, you probably just drink too much caffeine. I was like, but I have caffeine at like 7 in the morning. That's as late as I would drink it.
Have you really tuned in your sleep? Have you been able to?
I've been working on it, and it's been a work in progress. I actually was super pumped today because I actually stayed in bed until like around 4:50 in the morning. So that's like a world record for me. That's been like the longest I've slept in a while. I can force myself to go back to sleep, but I just it's pretty rare for me to be able to stay asleep. I can keep going back to sleep, but I wake up often and use the bathroom and stuff like that. So I've tried all kinds of stuff, taping my mouth shut. I got like the eye blocker things on, and I do all kinds of stuff to try to I put my phone away early. I haven't really messed around with any supplementation other than like some magnesium and zinc and stuff like that.
Have you always been that way where you got up at a certain time, or has it been just so long you can't remember?
I've been this way probably since probably for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
When I was a really high level competitive power lifter, it was way worse. I didn't sleep for a few years. I mean, it would be a big deal for me to get more than like 3 hours of sleep at a time. Maximum might get like 4 hours. So now, nowadays I get 6 hours sleep, 7 hours of sleep. I always try to get 8, but I've not gotten there yet.
That's my next thing, man. I'm really trying to improve my quality of sleep. We were talking about earlier. Yeah. When I was huge on everything, GHB was the only way I could sleep for 4 hours, literally. Right. And man, the way that I think that shortens your life and is bad for your brain health and just overall.
I do track my sleep, but I think that is like, just a note for people that do track their sleep, like just be careful with it, because don't let it alarm you. Like, to just track it and just like let it happen naturally and work on it. So that's what I've been doing. At first I was freaking out because I'm like, holy shit, man, this thing's only showing that I'm sleeping for like 3 hours, 4 hours. But over a period of time, I've gotten a little bit better with it. But I think what happens is I'll look at the reading or look at the information that I have, and then I'll feel tired because I'm like, oh, I didn't sleep that long. But it's not any different than any other day I've ever had, So
yeah, I'm trying to decode that. So I'm researching beds, because I'm a big fat guy, you always blow out beds, and I've never had a bed last more than 2 years. I'm in the canoe, my dogs are rolling on me. My wife's side is perfect. So if anybody out there knows a bed, man, throw a brand at me. I'm researching everything, but I like the ones now that regulate your temperature up and down through the night.
Right.
So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. But improving my sleep is my next thing that I'm really going to try to crack.
Do you have certain foods that you eat before you sleep? Because recently I found out, and it's kind of weird, I never really paid attention to this, but when I eat mainly fats before I go to bed, I don't have like much carbs before sleep. Mm-hmm. My sleep is really, really good. Really? And I've noticed that on a consistent basis. Initially I was like, nah, probably nothing. But then when I purposefully tried it out on certain nights where I wasn't eating too many carbs a few hours before, or carbs at all before bed, I had mainly fats, I've had the best sleep in comparison. Do you know anything about that, or if there's any type of...
So there are some people that will say like sugar will kind of wake you up and almost make you want to eat more sugar. And I've also heard some people say like, kind of be conscious of potential vitamins, because the vitamins could be breaking down, like something like vitamin B. I don't know how much truth there is to that. Yeah. It's just something I heard.
It can, man. I think if you're in a real dieted state and you eat carbohydrates at night, I think Lane refers to it as carb backloading or whatever he calls it.
Yeah.
And there is, you get a hit of dopamine, you get a hit of something and it makes you feel good and it kind of satiates you and puts you to rest. But for me, if I'm not in that depleted state, I don't respond real well to carbs before bed either. I respond a little bit better to protein and fat. But I don't know. I find inconsistency with that as well, because I eat the same, I eat cottage cheese and way before I go to bed, I could sleep, okay, or I get up at 3:30 every morning.
There's a lot of people right now, I think what's popular is to try not to eat, about 3 hours before bed, which can be really difficult. I know for him, he's like lifting and then you do jiu-jitsu, and that's usually when your fast is over. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to bed, right? So I think it all depends on the person, and maybe depends on like what does your lifestyle look like. I've heard you mention that in another podcast, and I thought that was great because you were talking about your diet protocol, which we should get into next, which is like a 30 or 60 day assault on body fat. But I thought it was interesting that you factored in lifestyle, and that's really rare. Most people don't ever factor in like, this guy's got a 9-to-5 job, and like, how is he gonna? Is this realistic for him to do? And most people aren't thinking that way.
Well, I mean, if you're doing something like a major energy expenditure, like you're lifting and then you're rolling around for an hour or so. Yeah. I mean, you have to eat after that. You have to.
Yeah, there's no choice, right?
No. For me, I try to.
So you're gonna go to bed and be starving?
No, I know it's ridiculous. I think it's really lifestyle driven. If you're a guy who sits in an office and doesn't have a lot of physical activity, you can probably eat 6 o'clock at night and then not eat before you go to bed. But if you're guys who train and you have to get up the next day and put out, I think that you have to fuel your body appropriately. You always have to be thinking ahead. I think that's how I view it. I'm eating for 2 hours from now. I'm eating for the next day.
Tell us a little bit about your diet plan. It's something torch, right? I remember saying
the metabolic blowtorch diet. Yeah.
Blowtorch diet.
Yeah. So
I love it.
One thing, we'll give it away for your viewers if they want a free downloadable copy.
Cool.
One of the things that I really like about that book, and one of the reasons that we wrote it, is because a lot of guys like us, we're advanced. We don't really need a diet protocol. We don't need that. We know what fasting is. But everybody always asks us, hey, man, what do you think about this? What can I do for this? So in this book, we really broke it down. We broke down everything about fasting, cited everything about it, what the benefits are, how to do it. We broke down how to determine your overall caloric need based on body fat, somatotype, what your activity's like. So somebody with no prior knowledge can really say, hey, I kind of fit into this. I'm going to start with 1,800 calories a day. Here's how to do it. Here's the foods that I'm going to eat. Here's suggestions on how to prep it. Here's the days that I'm going to fast. I'm going to do this. And then there's like sample workout of my, watered down Forge training program. Hey, you're just going to do this 3 times a week. And it's a really good guide for you to give one of your relatives, anybody, kind of something that you can give them, get them started, and then they come back with questions. Or more often than not, I get, hey man, I tried that fasting, and like we were talking about, I feel empowered with food now, or I finally know what my basic caloric need is. Now I can manipulate it, and then we can have a discussion where I'm really benefiting and, you know, helping this person.
Do you suggest that people weigh their food in this book, or do you kind of have them like eyeball a little bit more? How do you have them track their calories?
I do.
If they do at all?
So one of the things when I try to help somebody is I have them log food just so I can get an idea of what they're eating. Because when you talk to somebody off the street, they're like, "Oh, I eat pretty good." Okay, man, what's that?
Oh yeah, how many people tell us all the time? Oh, I eat clean. And you're like, I don't know what you consider clean, but it's not working.
Right.
Whatever you're doing is not working. Let's just start off with that.
So you're trying to gain weight and you're eating 800 calories, right? So a lot of people don't have any idea. So I do, yeah. When you're establishing, or I'm having them establish what their basic caloric need is, I have them weigh food till they get used to it. Once you get used to it, you've been weighing food for a while, you can kind of approximate, but then you're closer to an idea of what your caloric need is, how much you're going to eat for the day. But I think it's something that you have to develop. You just can't. General rule of thumb, yeah, aisles meat and vegetables, man, make your dreams come true. Fill your plate with meat and the rest with vegetables. You're good.
Right.
But when you're talking to somebody that's trying to learn their body, get into something, yeah, I like to have them weigh and really diagnose kind of how much they're eating, because they probably have never done it before.
Well, and also too, people get stuck, right? Like they're like, I've been doing the diet for 3 weeks. I lost 8 pounds in the first 2 weeks and haven't lost anything since that time. And it's like, well, now we got to really kind of hone in and pay a little bit more attention. How many calories are you eating? And then they can learn about how hungry they should be. I think that hunger is a big part of nutrition. It's a big part of dieting, big part of losing body fat.
Right.
Maybe not in terms of losing, or in terms of gaining weight, or in terms of performance, but I think that being hungry, I think, is definitely important to losing body fat. And a lot of people maybe don't know what they're getting into sometimes when they hop on a diet. I don't know if you should be like starving all the time, but you should probably feel a little hungry here and there. Yeah,
that's another thing I will say, man, especially if you're a trained person, if you're not hungry, you're not losing body fat. I've never lost body fat without being hungry. I mean, it's a rare instance.
Yeah, you go to a bodybuilding show, I mean, everybody on the stage is starving, right?
Miserable. Yeah. So, metformin, incidentally enough, curbs my hunger a lot. And most people that go on metformin or berberine, insulin, I believe, is a hunger driver. When you cut down on insulin exposure, for a lot of guys, it cuts their appetite way down. I mean, I describe it like when I first went on metformin, hunger was like a 150-pound timber wolf. On metformin, here comes a little lab puppy. And I'm like, all right, I can control you, man. I'll eat, when I want to. But insulin's a major hunger driver.
And on the metabolic blowtorch diet, it's a mouthful. It's mainly, it's lower carb, right? Like lower carb, moderate fat, or is it?
Yeah, yep. So it depends, man. We recommend kind of a moderate carb, moderate fat. On the days that you're not training, you're fasting for a longer period of time. You're consuming less calories. On the days that you're training, you're upregulating, eating, slightly overeating your caloric intake or your maintenance caloric intake. And
does like nutrients, because I mean, you touched on it a little bit in terms of like around your workouts when you eat your carbs, does nutrient timing come into play within this? Like when you eat your carbohydrates, when you eat certain things?
For me personally, yeah. But for this kind of generalized rule of thumb, I try to have people make their carbohydrates around training. But if you're training 3 days a week and you're not a really high trained athlete, I don't think it really matters. And especially if you're eating vegetables, I don't think that it's important to reglycogenate. You're not worried about all those factors. For me, that's a big thing, but yeah.
Why is it important for you, like, I guess as a bodybuilder, as somebody that wants to maintain muscle mass, why is it important for you to, kind of live off of stored carbohydrates during training sessions?
So when I, the way that I train, I go to positive failure, I do a little damage, I want to recover as fast as possible so I can do it again and repeat those cycles over and over faster. If I train a muscle that's out of glycogen, like I'm flat, I'm trying to get to a lean body weight, you go in the gym, you've been there, feels like you're a deflated tire, your shirt's all loose, you can't get a pump. You feel like it's a wasted training session. For me, I curb more.
That's the worst, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And you keep searching for it, and it just never happens.
No. And then it's.
I mean, you should just leave, but you're not smart enough to do that.
Keep going for it. You overtrain, right? And so I incur more muscle damage. I don't recover as faster. Then that really hampers my training. So as a rule of thumb, I don't like to train a muscle group without glycogen.
What about post-workout nutrition? Do you do anything in particular post-workout, or you just eat?
I just eat normally. it really depends on where my recovery's at, how hard I'm training. But I use food meals before and after immediately.
Have you messed around with like cyclic dextrins and all these different things? Have you screwed around with some of those powders and things like that?
Yep. So I have a pre-workout made. I have a post-workout made. Some of the things that I've used off and on. I like the cyclic dextrin. I like like short acting or short chain aminos around training, intra-training, all that stuff. I think it comes into play a little bit on my training, but if I eat properly before and after, I'm not really sure that it makes that big of a difference where I'm at. When I was pushing my limits of humanism, and looking for everything. Yeah. I mean, there was a 10-year period where I had a whey shake on the toilet every night at 3. I go into piss, drinking a shake. And I think that helped, but I'm searching, I was trying to get a millimeter here, a millimeter there, drinking protein shake during training. For me, where I'm at right now, I haven't seen a benefit to that. But again, I'm very vigilant about eating before and eating immediately afterwards, and reglycogenating so that I'm training with glycogen for that muscle.
Does that mean you bring food with you to the gym, or do you just wait till you get home?
In my car, I have meals, and so I have my post-workout, my pre-workout meal, and food on the way home.
I love it. I love that. That dedication is it's hard. It's tough. But you did bodybuilding. You competed as a bodybuilder, right?
Yeah, I competed in 23 shows.
Wow.
Stopped about, I think my last one was 2001. Shoulders kind of fell apart. I wasn't ever going to get the 330 and 300 pound on stage. Kind of made a decision to stop competing. Stayed 285, 290 till about 38. Everybody I knew started dying. Dante was having some serious discussions with guys, and he kind of made the first step that says, hey man, I'm going to a max of 260 body weight no matter what. I followed along and said, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, he was huge.
Drop down. Yeah, he's a big guy.
I mean, he's still big, but
yeah. So I think he's been vigilant about that too. Stay under 260. I'm usually about 255.
Still an enormous person.
Big guy. Yeah. Big dude.
No matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
You do anything in particular for recovery, massage therapy, cold therapy, anything like that?
I have a whole mobility setup at home. Like the newest thing I got was that So Right. Have you guys ever?
Yeah, we have one in the gym.
Oh my God, man!
I thought I was using it wrong the first time I tried it because my whole leg went on fire. I was like, that ain't right. And then everybody in the gym, they're like, no, that's the way it feels when you're jacked up. And I was like, oh man, this thing feels terrible.
So you know who Donnie Thompson is?
Yeah, absolutely.
I had the fortunate enough to make friends with him online and went out to his compound when I lived in Alabama. We drove over there and really got into the whole, recovery, the body tempering, the compression, dove full balls deep into it. Have the whole setup at home. I do a lot of mobility work to try to keep myself together. I did Krav Maga for 4.5 years. So it tore both my biceps, man. But that took a lot out of me, destroyed me everywhere up and down. And the mobility really helped keep me together. Still doing the mobility. I find that if I don't, I slowly degrade and things get worse. So yeah, for recovery, I'm pretty diligent on that stuff.
The mobility stuff, you're doing like distraction work where you're doing some stretches with bands and it's distracting the hip and things like that.
Yeah. So if you guys are wondering about that, Donnie Thompson puts out a lot of massive free content that's super valuable. He makes some products, but the distraction of the hips, the distraction of joint. He does a compression of joints, all kinds of crazy stuff, but it really helps, man.
Yeah, I went with Donnie Thompson probably 5 or 6 years ago. He went to Kelly Starrett's gym, and he took Donnie Thompson took a tube of like a bicycle tire and like wrapped it around Kelly Starrett's like ankle. And I was there that day, and he showed him like, this is how you compress these joints. And then, Kelly was like, oh man, I wonder if you I was like watching it all happen. I'm like, this is pretty cool. You got like one of the greatest powerlifters of all time with a mind like Kelly Starrett's, and they're coming together, and it was really cool to see that.
Donnie's a national treasure, man. If you don't, the knowledge and the stuff that he puts out, Kelly's too. Yeah, Donnie's done some really good stuff, man.
Well, he's been under those weights, and Donnie Thompson, he broke the all-time world record for total, and I think he was somewhere between the ages that you and I are now. I think he was like 45 or 46, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not young. And also at that time, he was already, 20 years into powerlifting, and then he had a football career as well. So it's like, this guy obviously knows what he's talking about.
And you see the pictures of him when he was a bodybuilder?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, he was insane.
Kidding me?
Yeah, he was insane as a bodybuilder.
Yeah, dude, incredible guy.
And he's got the body tempering stuff as well. The ex-wife, he calls that one. It weighs like 200 something pounds.
That is amazing.
They use it a lot. They use it a lot in here. Yeah, we have one. Yeah,
it's amazing, man.
That's just that big ass heavy cinder block thing that everybody puts on their back, basically. Yeah, there he is. Here he is at Super Training.
Yeah, his ankle protocol changed my life, man.
You know, he had some really interesting techniques. One thing that I loved, and I love when people are crazy. I really do. I love when people just have a mindset. Look at that fat face. I love when people have a mindset that's just a little different than everybody else's. And so Westside Barbell, they used to do sets of 2 reps on their dynamic work, on their speed stuff. And Donnie would do sets of 3. And I was like, oh, why do you do sets of 3? You know, Louis says to do sets of 2. He goes, it's one more than Westside. He's like, and that's my competition. I was like, I love it. I love that it's no regard to science or any other information. It's just one more rep than everybody else.
Just mental.
But he was a beast, man. He would squat. He would do dynamic effort squats with 515 pounds. He used the same weight every week, he said. No gear, and I don't even think he wore a belt. No knee wraps or knee sleeves or anything. He'd do these box squats, picture perfect form, super fast. He'd do like 8 or 10 sets of 3 reps. And then in between that, he would do kettlebell swings for about half the workout. And then he would do kettlebell cleans in between. And I was like, I'm watching him. He's just drenched in sweat. I'm like, this is a big, big guy. This guy weighs like 400 pounds. Yeah. I'm like, how does he, and I was trying to do the workout with him one day and I nearly died. And I probably weighed a good 100 pounds less than him. So I was like, how does he have this work capacity?
There's that video with him and Starrett where Donnie's big, right? I don't know how big he was. I don't think he was as big as, but he's big. Jesus, and he gets into that squat position. And you're like, are you fucking kidding me? I mean,
he just moved that like it was 0 pounds. It was 1,065.
Yeah, he's an amazing dude, man.
He's one of the bigger guys that we've ever had here too. We had Ray Williams here, and I think the two were very similar. I've never seen anybody with such a large back. Ray Williams' back is like the size of this damn table. It was unbelievable, just super wide. But you need a big body like that to be able to pick up these. Have you ever gotten into some powerlifting stuff yourself?
No. In high school, we had some powerlifting in my little hometown. Had some local little stuff, but I was never super strong. I mean, I think my top bench I did 565 for double, but I'm weighed 300 pounds. So
a lot
doesn't really, doesn't mean a lot.
A lot of bodybuilders say that, and then their strength is actually always kind of like through the roof.
That's not. I mean, in your world, that's nothing.
That's still a big bench.
That's not
565.
Yeah.
500-pound bench is a lot. Plus, I
mean, I never got the double. I never got my double body weight.
You're a tall guy though too. I mean, what are you, 6'4", 6'5"?
6'3". I was close to the double body weight a few times, but I was light.
Yeah.
But never really had a massive squat or deadlift. But I could do rack pulls with 7 plates for 20 reps.
Yeah.
But take me to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not. It
wasn't something you were practicing a lot.
No.
With the bench press, did you even work the bench press that often, or were you more incline and a dumbbell guy?
No, so
hammer strength.
There were so many guys. There were so many guys tearing packs in my gym. I did a lot of dumbbell work, and then I'd mess around. At my main gym, we only had dumbbells that went up to 175, and I'm doing those for 20 sometimes. So then I started going up 10 degree inclines to try to get a little bit more work capacity out of them. But I think with a dumbbell, I've maybe hit 15 reps on a flat bench with a 200, but nothing like the beast. Like when I was a kid, I'd drive out. I lived in Arizona. I'd drive out to LA and go to Venice and watch some of the guys work out. I always get humbled, man. And compared to those guys, I was never strong, ever strong.
You said your wife does a carnivore diet. How's that working for her? How long has she been doing it for?
So she has major food allergies to anything soy, any dairy, anything like that. A lot of weird kind of allergies. And so even when she was a bodybuilder, she ate the same things all the time. 3 ounces of sweet potato, 3 ounces of chicken. It's literally what she ate for years. Came off of that, trying to live a normal life. Everything messes with her. talk about the elimination
Yeah,
diet.
it is weird, when you restrict your food down so much. Sometimes, you when you go back to trying to eat regular
That was a
foods, you
mess.
can't do it anymore.
Yeah. So, we were talking about when Dr. Baker first came on Twitter and stuff, I'm throwing killer vegetable memes at him and stuff, making fun of him, but yeah, he's definitely onto something. And, so we kind of dove into it, and she said, hey, I want to try this out as an elimination diet. So she did 8 weeks of nothing but ground beef and some bone broth on top of it and salt. Great result. Of course, she's not lifting weights, but she put on more muscle, all
Right.
this stuff because she's a freak. And but digestion, everything massively improved. Gut biome changed, bowel movements, all that stuff improved. Compliance was getting at the point where she wanted something else, so we started adding in one food source at a time. Green peas worked perfect in her. So her main diet consists of ground beef or beef and green peas. She'll add in a few more little things, but consistently, very consistent with those foods. When she goes off, definitely notice it, definitely have issues, but she's probably hitting 6 months now.
Oh, cool.
And
Have you messed with that diet at all yourself?
I can't do it, man.
So you messed with it a little bit, and it was just
For me to
too much of the same food or something.
For me to reglycogenate and really
Yeah.
have good training sessions, I have to eat a fuckload of meat, man. And I just wasn't able to keep up.
Yeah. That is kind of the problem with it. I mean, it can work without the carbohydrates, but then you better have a pretty good appetite otherwise.
Right.
I know with Dr. Baker, he's developed the appetite over a period of time. I think he's always eaten pretty good, but when he came over to my house, he cooked up some meat and I went to use the restroom. I came back and it was gone.
It's gone.
It's like
Yeah.
3 pounds of steak or something. It was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Do you
Like that guy
ever
can eat.
do you ever recommend that type of diet for like anyone within Forged, or do you not really mess with that with like your clients?
If it's a specialized person that's having issues,
Yeah.
I like the elimination diet.
Okay.
I like to take people down to the foods, just like, I forgot who said this, man, but if you give somebody a workout program, you're doing them a disservice. Hey, here's your bench, do this 3 times a week. If I give somebody a food list, hey, here's your diet list, I'm really not doing them a service, I feel. So I try to teach people how to eat, and we do that by, hey, let's start eliminating foods, picking foods that work well in you, identifying those so we know what they do in your body. We know we have a reaction, and you're going to build your food list of stuff that you can eat, and that's what you're going to concentrate on. And then depending on your particular goals, we're going to eat more of this, less of that. But it all comes down to less processed food normally, more meat, more vegetables, and carbohydrates as you need them. And then on what those sources come from, or depending on how they work on your body. So
Tell us a little bit more about how you train. You mentioned the higher reps. How many times a week are you training, and kind of what do some of these workouts look like?
So I'm doing I do 5 days a week. I'm hitting shoulders 3 times a day now. I'm trying to bring them up. They've always been kind of a weak spot for me. So I'm concentrating on those.
3 times a day or 3 times?
3 times a week.
3 times a week.
Yep. And so I'll do chest,
I was
front.
like, man, I got to get to work.
So I'll do chest, front delt, medial delt, go back in and do back, rear, and maybe some calf thrown in there. I'll go back. I'll take a day off. I'll hit arms and shoulders, a full set of shoulders. I'll do a leg workout, and then sometime in there, just a feeder workout of shoulders again. But depending on my recovery ability and what I'm doing that week, volume looks something like chest. I'm doing 3 movements. I'm doing typically, I warm up depending on, what movement it is. It takes me a while to warm up. That might consist of like 5-6 sets where I'm just progressively adding weight, getting some blood in there. I'll do 2 to 3 sets of positive failure, then move to the next exercise. DC style, at the end of the workout for that body part, when I'm full of blood, I'll do a forced stretch. And then there's all kinds of different techniques that I'll use to not add weight because I can't keep adding weight anymore because of scar tissue, whatever. So some things I'll play with is like a rest pause set where you go to failure, take 3 deep breaths, 4 deep breaths, hit another set to failure. We'll do full stop reps where I pull the weight down completely and then do a press. Play with hanging out in the stretch position and then execute the lift. Puts more tension on it. I don't have to keep adding weight, and I'm not hitting 20, 30 reps, so I can cut down the rep. But increase damage or stimulate, damage needs to be fixed, and then I repair it.
You have other people that train with you?
I don't, man. My girlfriend's boyfriend let me correct that. my daughter's,
like, whoa, what do we get into? That's interesting.
My daughter's boyfriend. There we go. So my daughter's almost senior in high school. She has a boyfriend that's kind of a, like a dark match me when I was in high school. He's a meathead, he's into lifting, all this stuff. So part of our relationship building is I take him to do legs. When I go do legs with him on the weekend, beat him up a little bit, get some extra sets in. But typically it's alone. Workout's about 40 minutes or so. And then, I'll hit the stair mill or something for 15, 20 minutes.
You kind of have like main movements, or are they kind of all almost like more accessory movements?
I try to do main movements, and then depending on the body part, I'll do a few accessories, or I'll start with like an isolation movement, like cable crossovers, flies, and then I'll do a bench type movement with a machine, something like that. But I change it around. So anytime that I start to stall on my reps, and I'm tapped out, man. I keep adding weight. And although I beat some of my rep records this last year, I can't always go in there and try to shoot for that. So I'm going in there trying to be, trying to hit as many reps as I can for that day. When I hit a movement and I'm stalling and I know I'm not progressing, I'm just having bad days consistently on it, then I change it all around, reverse the order of what I'm doing, or I go to a different gym and use all new machines.
I know a lot of people are listening, because you mentioned positive failure a lot. So a lot of people are probably curious about what's the difference between positive failure, negative failure, et cetera.
So positive failure is when you can't execute the lift anymore, when you can't shorten the muscle belly. And I consider it when you start having to cheat, then you're not, you're going past that point. Negative failures when you have kind of a negative descent and you're having assistance descending the weight. I can't recover from negatives. I think they do a lot of muscle damage. It's a very effective way to stimulate your muscle growth, but it's hard to recover from. So I just do the positive failures. It's hard, part of the discipline of training like that. And one of the things we were talking about is, when I met my father for the first time like 5 years ago, and he destroyed my whole workout mentality when I worked out. It was a good thing, but I can't get into that mode anymore. But when you train to true positive failure day in, day out on all these reps, man, your shit has to be tight, because that's the pain zone, man. You really have to be determined to go there, and you have to be honest with yourself when you're there, because those last few reps, man, you know how it is. That self-talk starts, and you can talk yourself out of anything. And even though that's only like 3 or 4 seconds, it seems like an hour you're in there trying to talk yourself out of, no, I can quit on this. Oh, hey, that tear's coming back. You might want to back up. All this bullshit that's going in your head. But to go to true positive failure takes a discipline to get there. But that's part of the discipline,
Yeah.
Did your dad kind of disarm your workouts because you met him and he was cool, or what?
Yeah, so I never met my biological dad. I guess evidently I was carrying around something from it. But the way that, I kind of got through and survived my childhood and did the things I did was because I had this want to be something different. I had thought about trying to look him up before. I kind of tried. Anyway, I didn't speak to my mom before she died. A couple of years before she died, we had separated. She died. I got a death certificate with a marriage certificate. Found the guy's social security number. I'm like, all right, man, I'm gonna look this guy up. Found out where he was, sat on it, hitting like 42 years old now. My wife and daughter are like, you should really find this guy, give him a chance. Just find out what's the worst that can happen. I'm like, well, nothing, I'm going to punch him in the mouth and we'll be good. So I called this guy up and he's like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this phone call forever. And I'm like, what? Long story short, the guy's at my house a week later in his RV with his wife. He comes with a court records of all these times that I was moved around as a kid. I didn't know what was going on. This guy's trying to get custody. Anyway, have a half sister I never knew about. All this good stuff. Amazing human being, great wife. So I have this extended family now. About a week later, I go to the gym, and I used to write. I used to have a forged training like pamphlet. I would give somebody, hey, how do you train? Here you go. My mindset was a full page, how to get into this murder mode, what I called, right? And I went to the gym about 2 weeks after meeting this guy, and it's like somebody snuck into a nuclear power plant and took the fuel rods. I sit down at the bench. I'm like, all right, here we go. Nothing's there, man. It's gone. Had to completely retool everything. And it, I guess I didn't realize what kind of weight I had been carrying around about that, and I think it was beneficial. Probably not. I mean, it probably acted negative on me somehow. But yeah, man, it totally screwed me up. Totally screwed up my workout. So I really had to retrain my mind and retool, and now it's totally different than it was, but I can still go into that positive failure zone.
You still communicate with them now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. It's a good story. It's a rare story. Doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
But really good dude, man. And, you know, somebody, I wish I could credit him, but somebody had said, you know, when you look back on an emotional event or an event in your history that gives you like a negative energy from, or something that you're not resolved from, that you're not over it. And, you know, there's a lot of things in my life that I've worked through. I look back on time as a kid, whatever trauma's happening, I don't have any negative reaction from it. I don't have a heart rate increase, all that. So I think I'm over it. I've dealt with it. I'm cool with it. It's good. It doesn't affect me. I thought I was there with my dad, but obviously I wasn't. When I met him, all that shit was gone, and there was this weight was gone. So
yeah, it gives you a lot of energy. You know, you turn. I think first of all, it's great that at such a young age, you turned a negative situation in your house into something positive by taking that energy and going releasing it on working out. A lot of people sit around and feel sorry for themselves, so that's pretty awesome that you're able to do that. But if you didn't have that negative energy, you know, you probably wouldn't have been able to build what you've been able to build. It's basically a gigantic part of like who you are, right? So It's like, you know, there's kind of that, people always say like, oh, what would you tell your, 20-year-old self? And the answer, everyone should have the same answer. The answer should be nothing, because you have to be 20 years old. You have to go through the things that you need to go through. And I think there's times and places in your life where you probably should have some hate in your heart for somebody, and you probably should have some hurt, and so you probably should go through some shit. I mean, I think it helps get people places. People that have no adversity, they don't usually get anywhere. They usually don't have a story like this.
I call it rocket fuel, man. It's hard to get through all the things and to accomplish all the things that you want to, and to pass everybody up, or to escape a circumstance, right? I mean, I grew up at a young age. I remember looking around my house and me saying, fuck, no, man, I am not doing this. I'm going to change. I'm going to get out of this somehow. I'm going to escape it. And that was the rocket fuel, man, that hate to change everything and know I was not going to grow up in a trailer. I was not going to grow up with broken windows, all this stuff. And it is hard, man, when you're, raising my boys and raising my daughter, man, it's hard to instill that in them. Mm-hmm. Because you can't put them through that. I can't put her through that, but you still have to give them enough rocket fuel, freaking launch, man. And it's real difficult, man. It's difficult raising kids like that. I mean, my stepsons, I have 5 stepsons, one passed away, but all of them, we went through this period where it was rough, man. I was a hard ass, and they all grew up, and eventually we all got to that point where it was like, hey, man, I understand what you did. I understand why you did it. And thank you. And so I watched them all hating me, or have this adversity kind of thing, to growing older. And then we all become like, I get it, man, friends, and it was always a fine line with that. With my daughter, slightly different, girls are a little bit different, but it's hard to instill in your kids, man, that fuel that they need to get through life, I think. And it's your point exactly, man. It's very hard to do without adversity,
It's very hard with children because, your kids shouldn't have to do anything spectacular for you to love them, right. And for you to say, hey, I'm proud of you. They shouldn't have to really, in my opinion, they shouldn't have to really do much for that, not that you want to give them everything and kind of supply them with everything, but they're your kid, you should, and so it should be a fairly simple transaction in terms of like the way you feel towards them and the way they feel towards you should be fairly easy. But in some households it gets complicated. Like, who knows, your mom maybe grew up a certain way, your dad maybe grew up a certain way, and as you know now, a lot of weird circumstances happen that sometimes not everything's under your control.
Yeah. I mean, when you go lift, what's in your head?
Yeah.
I mean, is it different now than it was? I mean, how did that develop?
There's a lot of different things that I can draw upon. Most of the things most of what I've learned is most things are like fake. Most things are kind of artificial. They're things that you make up to, put like, football team will, take what the other football team said and they'll put it in their locker room and that'll be like their rallying cry.
Yeah.
Or you hear it time and time again, a team will win a championship and they'll be like, everyone counted us out. And it's like, well, no one really counted you out. You're a professional team just like everybody else. I'm sure you have some fans that were like rooting for you. Some people are behind you. But for me, a lot of times it was, stuff that I had to deal with in school. I was always in classes, with kids that were mentally disabled and things like that. And so a lot of it's, I draw upon things like that. And then that's happened with business as well. Like, all right, well, I'm not smart. Well, we'll see, that kind of thing. And then same thing with the lifting, competing against other people and, just trying to, utilize whatever fuel I have, and so sometimes I would draw upon, like my brother's death or something, and it's not a good place to go to really,
right?
Because it's too intense. It's like too fierce to really go there. But other than that, I mean, I grew up very, very fortunate. I grew up with great parents, and I grew up with an awesome upbringing. Everyone from my aunts and my uncles and my both sets of grandparents, both sets of my own parents. So I grew up very, very fortunate. That's something I share on the show all the time because, like, I didn't come from what you came from. I didn't come from what he came from. I came from where I came from. And so if I share a story of success, or if one of you guys shares a story of success, it's important for people to understand, like, okay, where did this guy kind of start from? Because then you can kind of compare your own life towards somebody. Like, maybe you didn't have the upbringing that maybe like a Steve Jobs had, or somebody who's very highly educated who kind of started out, not to discredit anything anyone does,
right.
But maybe they started out with a little bit cleaner push than somebody else, And as we said, either way, it's still difficult to really try to make it because you probably need some sort of fuel from somewhere. Because I don't know where you're going to get it unless there's something at least a little bit negative. Michael Jordan didn't make his basketball team, right? You got Tom Brady, who was like slighted by Michigan, and then he was drafted really late. There was like 200 quarterbacks or 200 draft picks or whatever before him, and he was going to prove to everybody that he was the best. But what I really love that Tom Brady has said is that he said, you ever feel like going back to Michigan and being like, hey, I told you guys, I told you so. And he goes, no, because I don't have to.
Yeah.
And I always liked that. I always thought that was a really cool thing. But yeah, I think we all got something fucked up inside our heads to drive us forward.
You know what Ronnie Coleman said? What kind of crazy motherfucker do you have to be to get under the plates? Or he said something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is, man. I see guys that lift like that, and I think you really do, man. You have to have something.
Yeah, you have to be able to kind of flip a switch. Or, there's some people that also just, when it comes to training, there's sometimes the complete opposite look to it, where it's like, this is a process. This works this way. This works from a scientific standpoint. It doesn't matter how mad, sad, or happy I am. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to pick up that weight. But I do think that when it comes to the heavier weights or the more intense sets, I do think that there has to be something inside that is at least a little aggressive. How do you feel about it? Because I know you lift pretty calm. Yeah. He lifts really like stoic. Like he'll even like kind of just be off on his own, like meditating. And meanwhile, the music's cranking in here and everyone else is going bonkers.
Yeah, like we've talked about this over and over. For me, it's different. Like, I do a bunch of meditation and stuff. And I mean, there's videos of me in this gym like years ago where you could see me trying to get angry before I lift. But for me, that was very artificial. Like, I really had to try. Like, when Mark does that, like he's drawing from something. I don't draw well from anger at all. Like, and then that's always been how I've been. And I just did it because I saw, okay, other strong people do it. So there's something here.
I'm going to headbutt the bar.
But it always took more energy for me to do it. And it was never something that I couldn't do that often. So I switched the way I go about it. And instead I did what came more naturally to me, which is like just being calming down before a lift, even a heavy lift, trying not to think about anything. And that just worked for me. And that's why I was curious when you said, like, after you met your dad, and you went and trained, like, you felt like you had no fuel, or you didn't have it. What what do you have now? Like, do you still draw from something else? Is it something different, or do you train differently, or is it the same type of?
I wish I never met my dad.
Yeah, I've joked about that. But I mean, when I had it, I was fighting aliens. I mean, people were, trying to abduct my daughter. I mean, I had a movie in my head at all time. I could just click on and I was there. But afterwards, it's a little bit different, man. You see me a lot of times in the gym. I got my eyes closed when I'm doing my sets. A little bit more kind of into a zone like you're talking about,
like a mind muscle connection.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, it's different, and I'm starting to kind of rebuild. It sounds stupid, man, but I'm rebuilding this avatar. And when I had it, I'd sit down and I'd visualize myself, and I would be completely, made out of stainless steel fibers like a robot. I'm lowering the weight, and I could see the muscles moving, and I'm building this energy up, and just feeling everything. And I'm back to a place where I have that kind of rebuilt and I can pull on. And that's a really good place for me right now. So I can kind of go into that, and I'm, transform myself into this robot guy, and I'm watching the muscle fibers contract, and I feel it, and I can go to that place I need to go to. But it's different now. It's real different, so it's interesting.
I've heard Michael Hearn talk about like how he's thinking about, if he's doing like a tricep push down or something, he's thinking about like separating out all the fibers, and like he's thinking about like the striations, or for somebody that has like a hurt elbow or hurt shoulder or something, when you're doing the exercise, you're thinking about the exercise like healing it. Like you're not thinking about like the delt and what it looks like and the makeup of it and the aesthetics of it. You're thinking about it from like the inside. You're thinking of the tendons and ligaments, like, oh, this is restorative. And he'll even close his eyes, when he's training. He'll close his eyes, and you're like, what is he doing? And sometimes he's lifting some pretty heavy weight.
Yeah.
He's got no facial expression. His eyes are closed. He looks like he's almost half asleep. But here he is, pumping out 405 for reps on a reverse grip bench press or something wild. You're just like,
he's an alien,
holy shit.
Man.
He is an alien. But he's taken principles from martial arts. Mm-hmm. He's been into martial arts from the time he was a kid. And so he, a lot of the stuff that he was learning in martial arts, like you're learning in jiu-jitsu, was the kind of, hey, like you got to calm down. If you want to be good at this and you want to be able to master it, you can't be doing it like a maniac. It takes a lot of technique, and it takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah, when you were describing that, I could see you as a jiu-jitsu player doing that, because that's what it takes, that calmness and that, I don't know, that reservedness. That's what I see when I see somebody doing it, what I think is a high level.
Yeah.
Or somebody doing it that's scary, just that calmness and that reservedness, and you're kind of real intuitive in your own head. Mm-hmm. And
you remember Hoist Gracie back in the original UFC? I mean, he would lay on his back, and everyone's like, "What is he doing?" And he would just like lay there, and like this other guy's going crazy on him, trying to just to pound his head into the mat, and he would just like put his head back and just wait and wait and wait, and next thing you know, the guy was tied up like a pretzel, and the guy was tapping out, and nobody at that time even knew why the guy was tapping out. They're like, "What happened?"
Yeah. He's holding his shirt.
Like, yeah, like he was just They're like, no, he choked the guy out. Like, wait, what? I didn't see that. What happened? Yeah, no one even knew what was going on back then. It was pretty crazy. It'd be great to get Dante on the show. That would be cool.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I've tried to get him on a podcast forever, and he's like like a Yeti, man. You're never gonna get him. But yeah, super knowledgeable guy.
Yeah.
I credit him to probably save my life, talking me to back off this, back off that. But a guy that's really put out great information and cared about people for a long time, man.
He's killed it in business too.
Yeah, and he should, man. I mean, the True Nutrition is a legit company. For me, it's beyond reproach with quality. He's a great dude, man.
I remember getting a supplement from them years ago. A friend of mine was like telling me about this caffeine type of caffeine they had, and it was like from chocolate or something like that. It's called Chocamine. I don't know if you ever heard of that before.
Chocamine stuff, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'll try it. And my friend just had some of it, and I just took a scoop of it, and I mixed it up. I was in his kitchen, and I drank it. And I was like, man, that stuff's really strong. He goes, did you use that spoon right there? And I said, yeah, I just used a teaspoon. He goes, no, it comes with like a tiny little scooper thing. He's like, you didn't see that in there? I was like, whoops. He's like, man, you're going to be like
We're
lit
going
up.
for a ride.
Oh yeah, it was like, I don't know, 1,500 milligrams of caffeine or something
Jesus.
crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I felt sick and just, I was like, holy crap. I got myself in some trouble with that one.
Have you, I just remembered this, because okay, sorry to divert, but you talked about the super high rep sets, right? And how it's like good for the joints. Do you ever mess with blood flow restriction?
You know, I did back in the day when it kind of became popular. I don't remember when it was, early 90s maybe.
Yeah.
I remember. And we were talking about when I was doing it, there was kind of the theory behind it that I was loading my blood up with a bunch of stuff, meaning anabolics, aminos, everything, exogenous insulin, and then doing those types of sets.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't see a benefit from it.
Okay.
But I was pretty close to my maximal jackness anyway. I always got massive pumps. Arms were always really good. I just didn't, you know, and I was training in partials and kind of doing that. I didn't ever get a real good benefit out of it. I see it, you know, I could see a benefit to it, but I would want to load the blood up with stuff too, like Milos talks about. You know, you want to have empty blood to do that. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of it.
Okay. Just curious.
You mentioned a lot about, you know, checking your blood work over the years.
Yep.
Have you seen a lot of improvements? You know, because when you were starting out, you know, years ago, I'd imagine you're probably making some mistakes, and you probably learned a lot over the years. Have you been able to keep yourself pretty healthy?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. So when I started working in the health food store, I was maybe 21, 22-ish. Started doing blood work then. Started, you know, I didn't ever have any issues. I've always
had a big catalog of blood work then, huh? Yeah.
I've always had super great lipid levels. My cholesterol's never been over 120. Never had any issues with that. When I started using anabolics, always was testing, but I wouldn't test afterwards, like after a contest or after I did something. I would test in the height when I was taking everything at once to see what the damage assessment was. And maybe it's one of the reasons why I'm still alive, but I never really had a lot of red alarms. I mean, I never really took a blood work and go, oh my God, this looks really bad. Maybe I should back off of stuff. I always handled it very well. My lipids never crashed. When I started hitting late 30s, when you know, I decided to back off and go to a TRT dose, that's when I felt that my body wasn't handling it as well anymore. My hematocrit started climbing. Iron was becoming a problem all the time, and I had never experienced that before. And so that's when I went
up the dose.
So that's really when I went from my base dosage of 750 tests a week to a legit 250, 200, 250.
Did you have to donate blood on occasion? Is that something you recommend to some people? Or
I do. I think it's healthy. I think it's, you know, if anything, to maintain your ferritin level. And there's a guy named PD Magnet that has a PD Magnet on Twitter, and he does a lot of writing. He has a book about ferritin levels and the danger it has. I think for that aspect, you should donate blood regularly. For hematocrit maintenance, I don't think that's the most effective way. You know, if you're having hematocrit issues, what I think would be alarming above 57, 58, and you're doing stuff like cardio, then that's time that I would consider backing off the dose. You can donate blood and you can hydrate, but it comes right back to where it was.
Has there been anything from a training perspective or nutrition perspective that you've been able to do to manipulate, you know, any bad readings that you've gotten, or is it pretty much just a manipulation of what you're taking?
For me, I started taking fish oil 21, and I've always been on it. I haven't really noticed. I had good, I guess, a genetic predisposition for blood work anyway. That and the way I've eaten, and I've supplemented with omega-3s, I haven't ever noticed a big swing in that. In clients, I can take a client with bad lipids and usually having them exercise, change the way they're eating, maybe some supplementation, we can change those numbers pretty effectively. But, you know, takes work, and that's, people usually don't want to put in work.
What have you noticed with, you know, these higher fat diets? Have you noticed anything changing for better or for worse with some people that you might work with?
That kind of comes back to the insulin exposure debate. So if you're on a keto diet, a true keto diet where you're eating a massive amount of fats, you're going to have a rise in blood lipids, and your LDLs are going to be higher, and triglycerides are going to be higher, but that's to be expected. I think your vascular health and all those markers have improved, and I've seen calcium coronary scores go down in that when you have high fats, your lipids are a little high, coronary calcium scores go down. I think it's because of lack of insulin. So yeah, if you know what you're looking at and somebody's doing a keto diet, there's a couple things that you'll notice with the blood lipids being higher, but those are okay. That's a condition where that's acceptable and actually is improving vascular health.
What's the best steroid you ever taken? It sounds like he's taken all of them.
I think it's changed over the years, man. I mean, when we first made Phena pellets, that was something special, man.
Tren. He's talking about Tren.
I felt like Zeus came down and had on me a dark urine colored bottle.
Yeah, why was that so strong? Even in a smaller milligram dosage, it was really strong.
Yeah, because there's all that stuff in it from the cattle,
yeah.
Right? The cattle injects. That was pretty amazing. I think
because it's half estrogen, right?
Filler. It goes right to kill your kidneys. NPP is pretty amazing. I always had a good result.
Nandrolone, like a DECA type thing, right?
Short-acting DECA, yeah. But testosterone's always been real well to me. Yeah.
So you have your clients take a lot of blood work, right? Okay. So when you like run into a lot of male clients that maybe they do have really low testosterone, what do you have them follow a certain type of protocol to deal with that? Because a lot of males actually suffer from that, correct?
Right. So, getting into the TRT world, man, I think everybody, especially males today, are going to have a problem ongoing. And it's environmental factors, it's our lifestyle factors. But if you just take a population of males with low testosterone, yeah, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's going to be a lot of them that could change and improve that or delay the onset of needed therapy with lifestyle changes. But you're a guy that works a 40-hour a week job. It's high pressure, it's high tense. You're on the freeway for 4 hours a day. Can you really change a lot of that? I mean, can you lower your stress levels and sleep better and do the things that you need to do to lower cortisol and improve your testosterone markers? I don't know, man. Most people can't effectively change their lifestyle enough to really make a difference. Some people can. And I think if you're working with a functional medicine person or somebody that's very tuned into TRT, they can make those recommendations. And if you fail that, then therapy is the option. But, that's kind of why we made the TRT book. We wanted people to have kind of a clinical resource for anybody off the street to say, hey, I'm kind of having these symptoms. I saw the commercial on TV. Maybe I'm going to educate myself a little bit. You can go into a physician's office, a clinician's office and say, hey, I'm exhibiting these symptoms. I think we should do some blood work. If my blood work indicates I'm low and I have these symptoms, I think we should talk about exogenous testosterone or, TRT. I think that, the evidence is out there in mountains, but if you have low TRT, if you have low hormone levels, it's a major health risk. Cardiac, prostate, it's very damaging to your health. And so it's not like a performance so much thing. I know people think that you're going to get this big performance boost, all that. It's not about that, man. It's about being in an optimal health space. If your hormones are out of whack, low or high, you're out of that space, man. And it's very damaging, not to mention quality of life.
Do you do any cardiovascular training?
Yeah. So for me to stay semi-lean, I have to do, probably, a couple hours a week. So I have a German Shepherd that demands I do fasted cardio in the morning and then one at night. So I get about half hour, 40 minutes of walks in. And then at the gym, I'll hit like the treadmill or something a little bit more intense for 15, 20 minutes and push it a little bit. But that seems to help my recovery a little bit. Even when I was really big, I always walked afterwards or did some kind of cardiovascular because it kept my hunger up, increased circulation, and I always felt healthier and I was able to eat more. So I've always incorporated it. And I think, especially in clients, man, if you take somebody with bad lipids, you can improve lipid markers with having them be compliant with cardiovascular work. So.
You mentioned a lot being on your feet a lot for work and being in the medical community. What do you do exactly?
So I sell surgical equipment, and I'm in the cardiovascular space. So sell perfusion equipment, things they use in open heart surgeries. And so it's pretty cool, man. I get to use my anatomy physiology knowledge when I train clinicians. I also like being in sales, and I also like being part, kind of, I'm not really helping patients, but I'm part of the extended team because I'm getting stuff into these people's hands that are helping them save lives. And it's kind of cool to watch, man, when they call you, hey man, we really need this, or, please help out with this. And you show up and you give them something and they turn around and save somebody's life with it. You kind of get a boost out of it. And overall to me, it's kind of rewarding because I'm interested in it and I get to play a little part in helping somebody out. It's pretty cool.
You ever see that episode of Seinfeld when Kramer drops a jujube into the guy's chest because he's watching a junior mint? Yeah, because he's watching the surgery. That's pretty damn good clip.
Yeah. What about the most effective peptide?
Man, melanotannin.
What is that?
Makes you tan.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
it increases your melanin production, and for me,
Supposed to be anti-carcinogenic too, I believe, right?
oh,
Possibly. Or am I
technically,
making
right?
that up?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it protects your skin from the sun, I guess.
Yeah, and it gives you random erections, so it's kind of fun to have around.
Really?
But,
Random.
yeah, just be standing around. You're like, all right. Hey.
See, Mark, I told you I'm on this peptide. Every time I see you, it's not because
It's
of
not
that.
you.
It's the peptide.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Melanotannin.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Yeah. How about PRP therapy?
Yep. So I have a PRP setup at home because I'm an idiot.
course you do.
of course.
Yeah, that's sick.
And well, I was doing the math one day. I'm like, like I had hair implants and stuff, and I've been losing my hair. So I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to check into PRP. So I talked to a buddy of mine that had it done. I go, what do you think? He's like, I don't know. How much was it? $1,000. I'm like, fuck that, man. So go online. I buy a centrifuge. I buy a setup. I'm in for $800, and I got it all right. So, I'm able to draw my blood
Take
out,
your blood out, spin it.
separate the PRPs, do that. The bitch is injecting your scalp like 30, 40 times. That it takes a little sand. It's a little tough. I didn't notice a lot from that. But yeah, I've injected all my joints, injected my junk, done the whole protocols. It's kind of cool to experiment.
Injected your junk.
Yep.
What was that for?
So one of the protocols they do in these anti-aging clinics is hit your junk with sound wave. And what that does is it causes mini vascular damage in your vascular pathways in your penis, right? And then they hit you with PRP, which heals that, and it improves your vascular structures in your junk. And so for guys that have poor vascular health, that makes a massive difference, man, in your erection quality, all that. So I go, well,
true.
I'm talking to a friend of mine that's a urologist. I'm like, all right, man, how do I simulate this at home? He's like, well, spin it down and you're going to have to cause some damage. All right, well, how am I going to do that? The old lady's only going to take so much, joking aside. Well, you could use a bandit, engorge it with blood. You could cause vascular damage and then hit it with a PRP. So did a couple rounds of that with that protocol. I didn't notice a really big improvement in erection quality because
But she did.
I think it's in part because I don't have calcium in my arteries. I have a very good vascular structure. So kind of cool to experiment with.
Failed experiment.
Didn't really something that I recommend or ongoing, but
Everybody's about to write that one down too. They were close.
the helped my knee capsules though. I felt a definite improvement from that. But the problem now is I'm dealing with almost 48-year-old stem cells that I'm putting back in, not as effective as they once were. So I think if I was going to continue that, I would do like an umbilical cell or something to get a harvested stem cell, a younger stem cell.
Yeah, have you messed with that at all? Like regular stem cell?
I haven't, man. That's like $3,000 a hit. I just haven't had an area that I was considering really doing that. But next injury I get, or if I have something catastrophic, that's going.
I don't know if we're there yet with all that stuff really is that great yet, but we're getting there.
It's getting closer, man.
Yeah.
It's getting closer.
Isn't there some benefit of like prolonged fasting and stem cell production or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it upregulates all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the benefits. Yeah, but you're not going to notice a massive increase with that. That's something you probably won't notice per se, like in a healing, especially like if you have an acute joint or something like that. But yeah, it's interesting, man. I think if they keep going the way they're going now with the stem cell research, we'll be closer. Maybe when we're 60, we can benefit from that. I don't know.
What's the biggest difference between, when you're a competitive bodybuilder and training now?
Drugs.
Just a little less of them?
Way less of. Well, that calorie consumption, right? My metabolism has changed drastically.
Is your diet any freer or not really?
Yeah, man. I'm like at 85%, 90 on plan.
Right.
I ate a quart of ice cream,
Which
the
is
other
like
night.
the equivalent of 120% for most people.
I'll have a beer every now and then, something like that. But I don't go too crazy. And I'm at the age where I don't have the flexibility to, man. If I start picking out or eating bad, I feel it, and then fat starts to pack on immediately. So I try to stay pretty close to plan.
You want to compete again anytime soon or anything? Any
man.
goals to get in shape, do a photo shoot, anything like that?
I do. Like last for the training session, I think it was a year and a half ago, dieted down. I got pretty close. I was probably about a month out. But as I mentioned,
It's hard to do it without actually stepping on the stage, right?
Yeah. I do have the 2 proximal tears on my biceps, so I don't know if I'd really compete with those again. And then, bodybuilding's changed a lot. When I used to compete, there'd be a super heavyweight group of like 5 dudes that were pretty on point. Now I don't even know if they have super heavyweights left. It's heavyweight, and there's like 2 guys that you're like, all right, bro, did you just wake up? And no offense, but I don't want a picture next to you, man.
A little bloated.
Yeah. Classic bodybuilding, the weight's a little off for me, and to be honest with you, dude, I don't know if I could make myself go through it again. I mean, you went through that recently. You know what it took.
Yeah.
It's it takes a lot, man. You have to dig deep, man. There's a lot of pain zone in there. For me, I was dieted about 20 weeks. And man, it was freaking brutal.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do it again.
It's hard on like your home life too, if you're married or have a significant other. It's hard to mix in with all that, or you have kids as well. It's hard with family, like trying to go out to eat or something. I mean, it's like you really start to run out of options the closer you get to the contest. I was drinking iced tea while my wife and kids were eating and everything else, because it's like you don't want to risk it. You're like, I'm not going to risk like eating some weird food from some restaurant. I don't know, even if I tell them not to cook it in something, they're still going to, and it's just easier for me to eat before I go, and then I would just sit there and just watch them eat like chips and salsa and burritos and everything else. I was like, oh, this is horrible.
One of the first times I went down to my wife's family's house when we first got together, I was about 27 years old. Like 2 weeks out of a contest, it's coming up on Easter, and they have this family tradition where they load up all the Easter eggs with candy for these kids. There's like 80 kids, right? So she has me on this bed with like 2 pounds of candy, loading up these little eggs, man. I'm like, do you have any idea what you're doing to me right now, man? I mean, you have any idea? You'd be at the kitchen table eating, you got cereal bouncing off your head. It's it takes a lot, man. It takes a lot.
Oh, it's a Cadbury egg. It's still an egg, right? I mean, how bad?
There's protein in there.
Yeah, how bad could it be? Anything coming up? Anything cool coming up that you got going on? Any family vacations or anything?
I think we're gonna hit the Keys again.
Yeah.
We just bought a couple used jet skis, so we're getting into that. I almost
cool.
killed myself, and it's jet skis go a lot faster than they used to, man. 70 miles an hour, and
Really?
yeah, dude, I fell off it at
Holy
high
shit.
60s.
I didn't know it was that fast.
70 miles an hour?
Dude, it's skipping across the water for.
What was that like on the? Yeah,
That's fast.
that's going.
It's fast.
Nuts.
It's like riding a motorcycle.
Well,
Just
how
plowing
fast do you
through
go?
alligators.
Like, do you even try and get that fast, or?
Yeah, I'm an idiot, man. I got a fast
Okay.
car. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So that was a brutal wreck, but it's fun, man. It's
It's gonna be
crazy.
like landing on the road.
I fell off the side, and I just remember skipping for a long time. Like,
I'm sure everybody else had a good time
it's
watching you do
gonna
that.
hit.
Yeah, people counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Get knocked out or anything, or no? It wasn't that bad.
No. But I could. I was pretty sore, man. My neck felt like broken glass for about a week.
Man, I had no idea they go that fast.
Yeah, dude, they're crazy, man.
It's insane.
Crazy. Got
Where
superchargers.
can people find out more information about you?
So I'm on all the social medias. I got Twitter, Facebook.
What is your Instagram? Because Jim Brown's probably not going to pop up.
Forge for Life,
There we go.
FORJ for Life, and Twitter's at TRT Jim. I do have, like I said, if your viewers want to get a giveaway of the book, I also have an email that goes out every so often. I'm not somebody that's going to hit. I don't hit people with emails regularly, but when I come up with something cool, like probably the next thing will be if I discover some sleep protocols, I'll write it all up and share with everybody. But you can go to powerproject.com or powerproject.forgelife, FORJLIFE.com. Get a free download copy of the book, share it with whoever you want to, and coupon code for the nootropic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great having you on the show.
Thank you, guys.
Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later.